Good afternoon, you're watching Sky News live from Hemel Hempstead on Sunday, December the 11th, in the aftermath of three huge blasts here at an oil refinery on the outskirts of town. It was a key oil depot called Buncefield. The explosions happened just after 6 a.m. this morning. 39 people have been injured, 2 seriously, but there have been no fatalities. Residents have been forced out of their homes. Cars, buildings and trees destroyed by the blast, and half of the oil plant itself. The aftermath can be seen from space as the smoke from the fire spread south. Police warn there could be more explosions, with the blaze expected to burn on for days. We're going to be live here throughout the day from several locations. Sky News reporters throughout the area as the emergency services struggle to control the blaze and to start the investigations into why this happened, how it happened, and what the implications are. Well, very good afternoon. This huge fire still burns around half a mile or so away from me at the Buncefield plant. Intense blaze underneath, huge black smokestack above it, rising high into the chilly December afternoon sky. This smokestack now running for many miles southeast of here, across parts of London, and this stack can be seen from miles and miles around the southeast of England. The explosions happened just after 6 this morning. One big explosion, then two followed it around 20 minutes later. They appear to have destroyed half of the Buncefield plant. It's the 5th largest oil distribution depot in the country, and it's done immense damage around here. First blasts were heard up to 40 miles away. Flames shot 200 feet into the sky, and this black cloud has been billowing hundreds of feet higher than that across the horizon. Casualties are still being treated in hospital. We spoke to one, Ian Stowe, just now. He's just been released, having got glass in his eye when the front of his house was stoved in by the enormity of the blast this morning. The remarkable thing, though, this blast luckily happened at just after 6 this morning. Very few people at Buncefield itself, and most people were still at home in bed around the area, so casualties kept down to around 39 at the moment. None critical and no fatalities. Police say they're treating the blast at the moment as an accident. There had been thoughts that perhaps it could have been a plane coming down or terrorism even, but at the moment the police say these blasts are an accident. The M1 motorway nearby is being closed from junction 6 to 10, and it may remain shut through until tomorrow morning because of the smoke that's covering the carriageways there. So let's just take a look in some detail at what happened this morning. The blast happened at this Buncefield fuel terminal at Leverstock Green near Hemel Hempstead. Nearby houses were damaged, hotels evacuated, with the effects of the blast heard as far away as Oxfordshire, Surrey and Sussex. Now, the depot is a major distribution terminal storing oil, petrol, kerosene. It's a key supplier of aviation fuel for Heathrow, Luton and Stansted airports. The first explosion happened just after 6 a.m. this morning, 6:03 to be precise. Two smaller blasts were then heard at around 6:20. More than 100 firefighters are battling the flames, which have been rising 200 or 300 feet into the sky all afternoon. There are concerns over pollution. Smoke rising from the flames has already forced part of the nearby M1 motorway to close, and the large plume can still be heading out east and southeast of here. With a look at all the pictures of today as the morning unfolded, here's Sky's Paul Brennan.
The blast was so loud it woke people from their beds more than 40 miles away. A huge explosion just after 6 a.m, sending flames hundreds of feet into the air and turning the clear winter sky black with smoke. Tanker driver Terry Hine had arrived at the depot minutes earlier.
We went up to the end of the terminal where the holding tanks are, queued up as normal, but me and a couple of Texaco drivers noticed that there was a large mist coming down, rolling off the tops of the tanks, and so I pulled onto the bays, the loading bays, and noticed that everything had tripped out, all the electric, where the guy in the bill of lading room in the office where you get your bill of lading, he turned everything off and ordered us all to leave, to get off the site as quick as possible. There was me and 5 other drivers. We was all kind of in a line walking towards the gate, and it was just a massive, massive explosion.
First reports of the blast were followed within minutes by extraordinary footage captured by Sky News viewers on their mobile phones and home video cameras, including one clip which caught one of the secondary blasts.
Out of my daughter's bedroom, the flames were, which is right back over there, the flames are massive, and, we didn't know what was going on, thought it was a bomb or an aeroplane going down, or, we just didn't know.
Just went and bang, it sounded like something, sounded like a missile or something, you know what, it wasn't, but it sounded like there was a big whoosh and a bang, and that was it. Frightened us all. We didn't know what to do. As you can see, the police and we only live around the corner, but our house is alright. There's other houses in the street that have had the windows blown out and whatever as well, so I don't know, it's all very frightening.
Damage to surrounding areas has been extensive. These viewers' photographs showing the power of the shockwave which ripped through neighbouring streets. Walls have collapsed and windows shattered. Had this been a weekday, the staff here would have been ripped to shreds by flying glass. Thankfully, at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, these business units were deserted. Dozens of residents from the neighbouring area of Leverstock Green have been evacuated to a leisure centre a safe distance away.
We thought we'd been broken into because we went downstairs and the whole of our patio door, it was all like, all the glass was shattered, it had been blown in. And so it wasn't until we went outside until we realised that it was a fire. Like the whole sky was just orange.
We went down into the lounge and the fireplace had blown out into the lounge. The landslider doors had blown off their tracks. All the doors were blown open.
Fire crews now face a daunting task to bring this blaze under control, but such is the intensity of the heat and the volatility of the materials involved, it's still too dangerous to actually enter the depot and attack the root of the blaze. Extra supplies of firefighting foam are being brought in from neighbouring fire brigade areas.
What we will do is gain enough foam stocks from neighbouring fire services such as Essex and also from the industry, and then really you work from the outside in, but you need enough foam to keep that going, because if you stop that attack at any time before you've done the whole site, then it will just reignite. So that's why it will take a bit of time to make sure we have enough foam stock.
Despite reassurances that petrol supplies will not be affected by the blast, nervous motorists have been ignoring the advice and jamming garage forecourts to fill up their tanks. Their panic buying may not be justified, but given the apocalyptic scenes so far today, it's entirely understandable. Paul Brennan, Sky News.
Well, that huge black smokestack is still billowing up from the Buncefield plant, as you can see, heading this direction, which I can tell you is southeast pretty much, which means it's drifting across the M1, across the northeastern side of the M25 and down across quite a considerable part of the east side of London and right across for many, many miles. You can see the smokestack, I promise you, for miles and miles around. Millions of people must have got up and had a look at this today from all around this region. Well, Sky's weather presenter Hazel Murray is with us to explain a little bit more about where it's heading and where it may end up, Hazel.
Jeremy, yes. Well, this morning what we had was an inversion layer, which is basically just a sort of cap at about 1,000 feet up, which makes it very difficult for anything to rise. So at the time that the explosion occurred, instead of going straight up the smoke, it started to spread out. Not only the smoke, but of course the sound waves. Again, instead of just going up into space and dispersing, those too spread out. Sound waves and reverberations, and indeed the echoes of that heard as far south as France, also Holland and Belgium. Now, as the temperatures have lifted a little bit on the surface, so the inversion layer not quite in such a strong position. So in some places we have got the smoke going straight up, but there's still a lot of it clinging to the ground and just spreading out southwards, westwards and also eastwards. And as you say, many parts of the southeast that did see some brighter weather earlier on now starting to haze over, and indeed in parts of northeastern London it's really quite an overcast day. That's not the cloud, it should be a sunny day. It is actually the smoke drifting down. Now I think if we take a look at our weather graphics, overnight we're going to find that this area of cloud and rain drifts its way southwards. It's not that much in the way of rain, but as it works its way southwards, it's actually going to die out anyway. But what it will do is bring in slightly more in the way of wind. But I think we will find that as we go through the night, so that area of rain comes down, and where it rains, of course, it's going to be washing out the particulates, i.e. the black bits in the smoke that's close to the ground. Now, as far as we understand it, there's no toxicity involved, but it does just mean that we're liable to have black rain. You might remember some of the red rain that we had when the wind was coming up from the Sahara and bringing that dust. Well, this is going to be similar. We should actually be experiencing black rain. It will wash the air to an extent, but given that these fires are due to burn for the next day or two and the smoke continuing from them, and that once this rain has gone through we return to the high pressure, the slack winds, the very cold nights. In fact, just the circumstances as this morning when the explosion took place, then I think there is every chance that we're going to see this pall of smoke lingering around, and perhaps particularly just pushing its way a little bit further southwards. So more of the southern counties of England starting to be affected. So really not much change there, and I think this is going to be a fact of life in these counties for the next day or so. Jeremy.
Hazel, thank you very much indeed. That's fascinating stuff, and it's probably worth us just emphasising some of the points that Hazel was making about the drift, the direction in which the cloud of smoke is heading, by showing us some pictures from our central London camera right in the heart of Westminster. And this just shows what Hazel was talking about, that a bright, sunny, crisp winter's day is actually looking really rather grey over Westminster, Big Ben and the Wheel there, the London Eye. Now that should be bathed in reasonable sunshine, but in fact it's looking pretty grey out there today. And those pictures will be, that sort of outlook, that sort of horizon will be seen by many, many people around this region, I would have thought, today, who are expecting to wake up to a nice bright sunny day, but the sun being pretty much obscured. Now let's just remind you of a couple of aspects of the blast and its implications, and look at the two pipelines that come in and out of Buncefield and what the impact of this blast may well have on them. Now the first transports petrol, diesel and other fuels from Lindsay Oil Refinery in North Lincolnshire to the Buncefield terminal at Hemel Hempstead. It operates 24 hours a day, and from here the oil's distributed to industry, to Heathrow Airport and to a wider community in the southeast of England. The second pipeline begins at Colnbrook in Slough. Fuel from Hemel Hempstead is transported on the 23-mile journey to Colnbrook by rail. And from here it's transferred into a 12-inch wide pipeline that runs directly to Heathrow Airport. So a big plan of action that needs to be sorted out there. Before we go and talk to the experts about the implications, the broader implications of fuel supplies and the disaster control here, crisis control, let's talk to David Kirk, who's with me. David, so you're wearing your Key Holding Services Limited badge. That's Tell me, you were on security duties here this morning.
Yes, indeed. My company looks after 3 offices, or we guard 3 offices on the site within a few hundred metres of the oil depot. In fact, one of our sites actually backs onto the depot, and one of the tanks is just about 20 metres away from our building that we had an officer in. And when the blast went, I was just approaching Tring to take over from one of my officers, when I saw the big flash in the sky, and within a few seconds he was on the phone saying the oil depot's gone up. So I was with him a few minutes later, and it was a disaster area. The whole back of the building's blown away. Fortunately, the front of the offices were behind the blast, so the glass there was preserved. But a few minutes later, I went up to see one of my other officers, whose building actually faces the oil depot, and that hit, and the blast hit the front of the depot. He was flown right across the reception area, followed by the doors and all the glass, and the offices were actually devastated.
I'm amazed that there weren't more serious injuries then.
Absolutely, all three officers very, very shook up that were concerned, and obviously we got them home as soon as we could.
Did they have to go to hospital?
No, like I say, they were just badly shook up. Unfortunately, the officer who had the door blown in, he got out of that without a scratch, thank goodness. But a few minutes later, we and my colleague and myself had to go to Tring to do an open up, so we was a bit late on site. Should we have been there at 6 o'clock on the handover, we'd have been outside in the car park right next to the blast, and we'd have had the full effect of the blast and the next door building which came down.
So the fact you were so close, I mean, you would have thought that it would have been even more serious, but you're saying the side of the building's blown in?
The back of the building is blown in, the roof has come up on the building next to the depot, but like I say, the worst affected buildings were a little bit further away because they got the full impact of the blast.
Did your colleagues sort of give you any hint that there might have been a warning of any sort here?
None whatsoever.
It really came out of the blue.
Absolutely, they were just all preparing themselves to be hand over and go home to bed. And the other guys came on. Well, one of the sites, actually, he got there early and took over from the other guy, so he's off home. The guy had just been there a few minutes when all hell broke loose.
Presumably, I mean, one of the remarkable things is that it was 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. Any other time, presumably, would have been a lot more people there.
Absolutely, yes. There have been Well, any other morning, the warehouse would have been full of people on all the sites, in actual fact. So, being a Sunday, there's no one there, so it was only us there. So it was.
We're talking about hundreds of people normally.
Probably about 20 on one side and about 50 on the other one. So the warehouses would have been packed.
But from what you could see when you went in there, I mean, pretty extensive damage, not only to the buildings where your staff were,
yes.
But wider
there's a brand new office warehouse building next door, massive, huge, great place, only just finished, and all the aluminium walls have gone. You can see straight through it, see the fire. It's gone totally.
So lucky escape, really, but
yes.
Obviously a long time till people are back there working, I imagine.
Yes, it will be. Well, once we get the all clear, this is a bit worrying for us because we're going to have to stand by and wait till we get the all clear so we can go straight in and to protect the building because they're open to the elements and everyone else.
David Kirk, good for you to spare the time to come and tell us your story. Extraordinary story, really, and one of the many remarkable stories of people who were very close, much too close for comfort this morning. But the remarkable thing is that there seem to have been so few casualties and no fatalities, which is incredible. 39 people injured, a couple quite seriously, but none critical according to the emergency services. So let's just guide you through those main points today after in the aftermath of this extraordinary blast here at the Buncefield oil depot. This key oil depot is one of the 5th biggest in the country, near Hemel Hempstead. It's in flames still after being rocked by these 3 huge explosions this morning. They happened just after 6 a.m. Officials say, just to confirm what I was saying, 39 people injured, 2 of them seriously, no fatalities. But, as you're hearing from David Kirk there, many of the buildings seriously damaged in the blast. These explosions still being treated by the emergency services as accidents. The first blast was heard more than 40 miles away, while nearby residents said they were woken by a huge boom as their houses shook. 2 other explosions were heard some 20 minutes later. Now, the area around the depot has been evacuated. People are being warned to stay indoors as this thick black smoke continues to billow into the sky, and police are warning that more explosions could be likely, but of course the area itself has been largely evacuated now. The M1's still closed from junction 6 to junction 10. That closure could stay in place until tomorrow. Now let's just talk to some of the experts who've been good enough to join us today with their views. Ray Holloway's spokesman for the Petrol Retailers Association. Roger Young's a member of the Institute of Civil Defence and Disaster Studies, a former policeman in the Thames Valley, and Jeff Charlton's from Disasters UK. Thanks for sticking with us this afternoon and giving your best advice to the people watching, all of whom have got a lot of questions, judging by our emails. A lot of people with a lot of thoughts on how dangerous this is, what the implications are. Roger Young, if I could start with you, your best advice from where you can see from the information you've had so far of the implications of this and the dangers that might lie ahead for the public in the area.
Yes, the information we have here is fairly scant really, but the strategic management of this incident will be getting more and more information in all the time, and as soon as the toxicity of that cloud is known, then the advice will begin to come out in much more detail. I repeat, the broad advice that was given by the Civil Contingencies Secretariat is always to go in, stay in and tune in. So if you are under the path of that big black cloud, just be sensible. We know it's not going to be really very, very bad for you, but just be sensible, go in, stay in, tune in, and then you will protect yourself and your family as best you can.
But basically stay away from what you can see, I suppose. If you can see a big black cloud and it's close enough to start breathing in the effects of it, then you're too close, presumably.
Absolutely. Apply common sense in all these situations and you'll never go far wrong.
Jeff, if I can bring in Jeff Charlton from Disasters UK. Jeff, what's the procedure now? We're some 8 hours after the disaster. What's going to be going on to try and mop up and shore up in the aftermath?
Well, I'm surprised initially that the government haven't come forward with an estimation of the plume spread and where it's likely to affect our buildings. Certainly they should have that information available, and companies and businesses that may be affected by not so much the toxic effect of the soots, because dissipation will take some extent of that way, but certainly an awful lot of buildings may find that their air intake systems will start taking in aerosols and odour, and people won't want to work in those buildings, or they'll be concerned. So if the government gave some advice to businesses, this is just one point, so that they could close down their systems and actually seal them, not just close them down, but actually seal the air intakes of their buildings. This contamination plume looks like it could come towards London and certainly affect an awful lot of businesses. With the homeowners, as Roger said earlier, stay in, maybe keep the temperature up. It's quite useful really in this cold temperature and climate at the moment. If you keep the temperature up inside your home to outside sources, you're going to get an in to out air movement rather than the other way round, which of course is okay and sensible in this temperature zone anyway.
Jeff, what's the sort of standard procedure on this? Are you surprised we haven't been told more of the content of this cloud and therefore what risks, what level of risks there are? Shouldn't we be knowing that so that, as you say, we can, in our homes and businesses, can be starting to take precautions specifically?
Well, if they said that it was the most toxic cloud that's ever been seen, there's not much more that you could do if they told you there was nothing in the cloud that was toxic. So
right.
There's not an awful lot you can do. As everybody's saying, keep out of the area, just keep out of harm's way. It's the only thing you can do really, but I really do think that people should be, people with heart conditions too, the respiratory problems that people will find that are exacerbated by this, that can lead to some sorts of cardiac problems too. So I think other hospitals should be starting to get onto standby for additional people coming in from other areas far away from this incident. We're going to look at secondary effects of this fire. Lots of things are going to start happening. For example, I just seen one of your film crews has shown pylons, electric pylons. One of the things that I saw that was a major problem in Kuwait in the 89 and 90 was that the pylons from the national grid got covered in oil, and suddenly we found that power cables started to short out over the oil. So there's maybe National Grid should start now looking at what they can do.
Let's bring in Ray Holloway here from the Petrol Retailers Association. When we were talking a little bit earlier, Ray, you were giving some calming advice to the car driving, truck driving, bus driving public not to panic.
Absolutely, Jeremy. There is sufficient stocks normally available at any one filling station for up to 4 days of normal trading. What we don't want is a panic today that actually sucks out essential sort of litres of fuel for the beginning of the week. And if everyone really just behaves to their normal pattern, then there's no reason to do otherwise. The fuel will be available at those filling stations when they would normally buy it, early days of this week.
But we all know the British public, they like nothing more than a good old petrol panic, do they?
Well, we've had enough evidence of it, unfortunately, as recently as September. So me sitting here saying don't panic is the easy bit. I can think of better things to do than queuing in sort of a long line of cars outside of forecourt on a day like today. And I really can't stress enough that it is just making problems for themselves in the days ahead. They'd be far better driving on with the fuel that they have and return to this when it's needed later this week.
Ray, perhaps then the helpful thing would be to stress maybe where Buncefield fits in to the overall scheme of things. And we tend to think, wow, this is a huge plant. We're all going to be out of fuel. Presumably you can assure us that this is one of many, many plants, part of a huge network, and therefore one piece of the network out of place doesn't bring it all to a halt.
Well, it most certainly doesn't, and although it's the 5th largest storage depot in the UK, it certainly isn't the 5th largest in terms of the litres that actually go out of there. So let's be absolutely right about this. It sits in a strategic point to the north of London, heavily populated part of southeast England. Therefore, around it, it has to be supported by another network of depots. And those depots now will actually switch into supplying fuel into the Hemel Hempstead area rather than it coming out of there. I expect all of the companies today will be moving their trucks late today when they're allowed to out of there to the other depots. And believe me, the oil industry is a very robust one, and it will deal with this, and there is no need for the motorists to panic on their behalf.
But we have heard that half of this plant may be destroyed, and presumably there could have well be, and we haven't had information on this, there could well be quite a number of oil tankers in there that were ready for starting deliveries at 5 or 6 a.m. tomorrow morning that have been damaged or destroyed. That may be part of those pipelines that have been put out of action.
I very much doubt if the pipelines would have been affected, Jeremy. We're dealing here with installations that are actually constructed to take direct impact. And the other thing is that I come back to this point about the smoke. Burning oil looks horrendously sort of like the seat of a very, very large, uncontrollable fire. It often looks much worse than it is, and I think we're seeing a bit of that now in Buncefield. And I think over the course of the next few hours we'll hear more and more reasons to actually sort of see this as perhaps a lesser scale event. Half the depot at Buncefield would be a very significant loss. My view is that because of the spread out of the Buncefield site that we're not quite seeing that.
Let's hope you're right. Ray Holloway, Roger Young, Jeff Charlton, thank you all for your expert advice for the moment. Be back to you very shortly, I'm sure, for more views on the aftermath of this extraordinarily large explosion today on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. As you can see, the smoke is still billowing out into the afternoon sky. We'll tell you what it all means and what risks you're at as a result of it coming up very shortly. Right now, let's have a break on Sky News.
Survival depends on the ability to evolve. Introducing the most advanced Mondeo yet. The new 2005 Mondeo. Evolution is beautiful.
Imagine doing this, then doing this with your best fountain pen. The JML Classic fountain pen won't leak or blot because of its virtually indestructible iridium nib, writing smoothly and effortlessly. In the JML Classic pen set, you get the fountain pen, plus a roller pen, ball pen, 2-colour pen, micro pen and mechanical pencil, as well as this fantastic 66-piece refill set. A wonderful gift this Christmas for an incredible $9.99 at Woolworths, Boots, in-store and Wilkinson's right now.
When a mouth ulcer pops up, Bongella's triple action helps kill germs, reduces swelling and relieves pain. Don't put up with it, sort it with Bongella. And now available new Bongella Cool, powerful soothing relief in a cool mint gel. Bongella Cool, a cool new way to beat mouth ulcers.
On your left is this Acer Pocket PC with built-in sat-nav for only £199. And on your right, save £100 on this Konica Minolta 8-megapixel digital camera down to £199. And exclusive to Comet, this motorised golf trolley for £179. Comet, we live electricals.
Do you have the code? The Armani Code. Fragrance for Men by Giorgio Armani.
This Christmas you can get a Prem Plus special offer season ticket for £30. Oh yes you can! A Prem Plus special offer season ticket for just £30. And look at all these great fixtures. And many more to come. To order your Prem Plus season ticket, call 08705 160 160 or go to channel 437.
Very good afternoon. You're watching Sky News Sunday. We're on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. The reason we're here is that very large black cloud still pouring into the sky 8 hours after some huge explosions here at the 5th biggest fuel storage depot in the United Kingdom. Let's just talk you through those main points on the Sky News headlines today. This key oil depot near Hemel Hempstead is still in flames after being rocked by 3 huge explosions just after 6 this morning. 39 people were injured, 2 seriously, none critically, and there have been no fatalities, but there were many buildings damaged by the blast. These explosions still being treated by the police as accidents. The first blast heard up to 40 miles away, while nearby residents said they were woken by a massive boom as their houses shook in the blast. 2 other explosions were heard some 20 minutes later, and police say more explosions are expected, but there haven't been any in the last couple of hours. The area around the depot has been evacuated. People are being warned to stay indoors if they're anywhere near this thick smoke that continues to billow up into the sky. Hospital officials say the plume is not very toxic, but some people may experience breathing difficulties. There are certainly problems with air quality in the path of the column of smoke. And police are warning that more explosions are likely. So let's just remind you the sequence of events today and how we got to this stage where we are now. The blast happened at the Buncefield Oil Storage Depot, the 5th largest of its type in the country. It's very close to Leverstock Green, where we are here on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. All happened very close to the M1 and the M25 junction. Nearby houses were damaged, hotels have been evacuated, and the effects of the blast heard as far away as Oxfordshire, Surrey and Sussex. Now this is a major distribution terminal storing oil, petrol and kerosene, and it's a key supplier of aviation fuel for Heathrow as well as Luton and Stansted. First explosion happened at just after 6 a.m. Then there were 2 smaller blasts heard around 20 minutes later. At least 100 firefighters have been out on the scene since early this morning, battling with the fires, trying to keep them under control. And of course flames shot into the sky earlier. Now it's just this big black column of smoke that dominates the horizon right the way across this region. There are also of course concerns about pollution and air quality. Smoke rising from the flames already forced part of the M1 to be closed. That could remain closed right the way through until tomorrow. And everyone in the region can see this huge column of smoke which is behind me and hanging right the way across the region, and I'm sure it's hanging right over the head of my colleague Sarah Hughes, which is down at local police headquarters waiting for, I think, another police information briefing. Sarah, what do we know so far?
Well, Jeremy, we're expecting a briefing sometime after 3 o'clock this afternoon from the Chief Constable of Hertfordshire Police, Frank Whiteley, his colleague from the Fire Service, the Chief Fire Officer, Roy Wilshire, also from Jane Halpin, the Director of Public Health in the region, and from Oskin Edwardson from the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Ambulance Service. So those four will give us a multi-agency briefing sometime after 3 o'clock. Now, the latest casualty figures that we have, as confirmed by Hertfordshire Police and from Hemel Hempstead General Hospital, are that there were 39 casualties in total. 37 of those described as walking wounded. Most, if not all of those, have now been discharged from Hemel Hempstead General Hospital. One patient was transferred to Watford General Hospital. He had suffered lung problems as a result of the blast. He was, we believe, a middle-aged, he was about 200 metres from the blast when it happened, and is a middle-aged man, he's been described as. Another patient is under observation at Hemel Hempstead Hospital and will remain in hospital today. Now, we also understand 23 police officers had medical checkups. Nothing specific, but they were given checkups, we are told, by the hospital. And the hospital say they are expecting some people living in the vicinity to suffer respiratory problems as a result of that plume of smoke that is overhead. They say that it is an irritant. It's not particularly toxic, but it is an irritant. It will cause some irritation to the throat and lung area, so people will be coughing, have sore throats, sore eyes perhaps, and after prolonged exposure they may suffer some skin irritation as well. Anyone who has asthma or any specific respiratory problems anyway should be more cautious, and if they have any problems, get in touch with their GP. Anyone who's concerned should call NHS Direct or go along to the hospital, Hemel Hempstead General Hospital themselves.
Go in, stay in and tune in is the government public service advice on these things, I think, Sarah, and that's probably pretty good advice for anyone who's close to the smoke. We're about half a mile away or so, and it looks pretty evil from where we are, and we're still not absolutely sure what the content is, I suppose, are we really, Sarah?
That's right, and at the hospital earlier they said they were getting updates from all of those involved as to what the content was. They don't know exactly how toxic it is, but they say they don't believe it to be particularly toxic, but obviously it is overhead, it is very thick black smoke, it will cause irritation, and the advice is for people living in the area to go indoors, shut their windows and stay indoors and keep watching the news for updates. Anyone who does have any concerns, of course, to get in touch with their GP. They don't want people to be ringing the emergency services unnecessarily. Obviously they are stretched to their full capacity at the moment.
I was surprised that a wider area hadn't been evacuated earlier. What are the emergency services advice on evacuation?
Well, the advice is if you can stay indoors and you haven't been evacuated, then do stay indoors and shut all your windows. If you are in a property where your windows or doors have been blown out, as many of them have as a result of the blast, then you should evacuate yourselves, is the advice from the police. Evacuate yourselves and take yourselves to somewhere where you can shut yourselves in and get away from that smoke, because it will cause irritation. An area has been evacuated. We're waiting to hear from the police as to whether they will be evacuating a wider area. As I was driving past to come to the police station in the last hour, the smoke has certainly dropped. I don't know whether you can see the same, Jeremy. It's certainly much lower than it was earlier on. It is across a very wide area and the wind direction has changed. So whether or not they will be evacuating any more properties, we'll wait to hear at this police press briefing in the next few minutes.
You're absolutely right. The smoke does appear to have slipped down. I think there's a degree of temperature inversion that may have caused that, and I think it's also slipping slightly more south-southeast rather than southeast, which it was earlier. Sarah, I was talking to people here. I think the one thing that they find remarkable is that so few people have been hurt and there have been no fatalities, considering the scale of the blast.
Yes, certainly. That's the feeling of Hertfordshire Police and the hospital as well. They say people were very fortunate indeed. This happened at 6 o'clock in the morning. There were 10 people working at the depot at the time. All of those were accounted for. And we heard from a spokesperson for Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire Ambulance Service earlier who said he had spoken to 2 men who were closest to the blast when it happened. They had been knocked off their feet by the force of the blast, but they hadn't suffered any more than a few cuts and bruises. They were obviously in shock, but they felt very fortunate indeed. 39 casualties in total, 37 of those walking wounded, 2 more serious. But given the scale of this blaze and the scale of the incident, this is described as a major incident by the police, then you would say those casualty figures are relatively low.
Remarkable and very fortunate. I think that the timing of Sunday morning was probably all important there. Sarah, thanks very much for the update. Sarah Hughes with the police at Welling. She's going to be keeping us up to date with that news conference. We're expecting that in about 20 minutes time, so we'll hear more from Sarah then. So you can see the smoke just starting, it is starting to settle a little bit low. It might be worth a quick look across here, just starting to get a little bit lower to the ground. It was tending to go up slightly more vertically earlier, and the more it hugs the ground, of course, the more there could be a risk of reducing air quality for many of the people who live around here in the path of it. Let's show you another remarkable view of this. One of the many Sky News viewers who's taken the trouble to send in their pictures today was somebody who was up in an aircraft earlier this morning flying over the scene. And there you can see the wingtip of the aircraft and that huge plume of smoke right the way out there in the distance. And you can see the colour separation there from the lower clouds and the clearer sky to suddenly that great black sheet looks almost like tar's been poured on the sky in the upper half of the frame there, where the smoke is starting to spread across. I would think that was probably mid-morning when that plane was coming in. I assume they were flying into one of the London airports, and since had a chance to send that photo on to us. But a fascinatingly vivid sight from afar of the scale of this blast. Well, the Defence Secretary John Reid has been talking to Sky News earlier and said that the armed forces were on standby to help with the fire, but that so far it doesn't look as if their assistance is going to be necessary. Dr. John Reid.
Well, as far as we're aware, on the police advice, this is still regarded as an accident, Adam. Obviously, everything that is being done, everything that can be done is being done. I understand, and I fully understand why you might have to nip over quickly to a press conference. The police will be releasing further details of that. The armed forces, as ever, are on standby if necessary, but we've received no request for such assistance at the moment. So I think at this stage we leave it with the police to get on, and the emergency agencies to get on with the job, which they always carry out so professionally.
Dr. John Reid, the Defence Secretary there, just saying that armed forces are on standby if this disaster turns out to be on a big enough scale for them to come in and help with emergency services in that region. No sign of that at the moment. So you're hearing from Sarah Hughes, our reporter over at Welling. Police and all the emergency services are going to be holding a big news conference in about just under 20 minutes time, around the 3 o'clock mark, when hopefully they'll broaden the picture of information that we got in the aftermath of this huge explosion at the Buncefield Oil Storage Depot. We'll have more for you on Sky News this Sunday, coming up right after this.
We're dealing with a very frightened and dangerous girl.
She tried to kill me.
We have to assume Karen Reynolds has been infected.
Something's wrong, Karen.
If this signal continues to spread, we are going to have millions of infected people.
I can't even begin to calculate the risks.
It's spreading. It's in everything. We are running out of time.
You can't save us. You can't save yourself.
Threshold, Wednesday at 9, Sky 1.
true, you know. The longer you stay together, the better it gets.
In rural Russia, some people still believe you can cure the symptoms of a cold by jumping into an icy pool. Well, we don't. Because when you've got a headache, blocked nose, sore throat and chesty cough, only we can give your cold the Beechams all in one. Until there's a cure, there's Beechams.
Australian wine at its peak.
Life can make your hair thin. New Pantene Pro V Full and Thick collection. Our unique Pro-Vitamin lightweight formula penetrates hair deep, leaving your hair looking noticeably fuller and thicker in just 7 days. New Pantene Pro V Full and Thick. More to play with. Pantene is now recommended by the Institute of Trichologists, the UK's hair experts since 1902.
Very good afternoon. Let's take you through the top stories, and the news dominated today by this explosion here at a key oil depot near Hemel Hempstead. It's still in flames after being rocked by 3 huge explosions just after 6 a.m. this morning. 39 people were injured, most of them walking wounded, as the ambulance service described them. 2 seriously hurt, but no fatalities. The depot is divided into 2. One half's been destroyed, we're told. Police are treating the blasts as accidents. The first explosion was heard up to 40 miles away, while nearby residents said they were woken by a loud boom as their houses shook from the blast. 2 more explosions were heard later. Police say more explosions are expected. The area around the depot has been evacuated and people are being warned to stay indoors as thick smoke continues to billow into the afternoon sky. Hospital officials say the plume's not very toxic, but some people may be experiencing breathing difficulties. The nearby M1 motorway could remain closed until tomorrow between junctions 6 and 10. So these are the latest live pictures showing the smoke and flames billowing up, and there are fresh flames right in the heart of that smokestack behind me, and they keep, every now and then there's a little updraft of wind, the flames rise up again, this huge plume of smoke, this column of black smoke disappears into the distance and way across the M1, across the M25 and down towards London. Well, these are some pictures that may give you an idea of just how close the blasts were this morning to the local residents of the local housing estate. Some of the latest video we have in, we've had not only our own Sky News cameramen all around the area, but many amateur video experts and cameramen have been out there gathering pictures as well, and you can see some pretty seriously damaged houses. We were talking to a chap earlier who got glass in his eye when his whole window and patio doors blew in on him and his family at 6:03 this morning. He had to go to hospital, but still in good enough shape to come and talk to us. But you can see some of those houses very, very close to the seat of the explosion this morning. What caused the explosion, we're still not certain, and maybe the news conference from the emergency services coming up in about 10 minutes' time from Welling may give us a little more clue as to what the experts think could have been behind it. But firstly, those eyewitness reports, and it's worth hearing this story from truck driver Terry Hyde. He was at the depot when the explosion occurred this morning. He was just about 500 feet away and says he's lucky to have survived. A short while ago, he told us on Sky News all about the lead up to the blast.
It was just a normal day. We just pulled in, we have to queue up. I was at the front of a queue because all the lorries were in the loading bays filling up. But I could see in between the tanks, the storage tanks, we're facing them with our backs towards the entrance gate. So we're looking at the storage gates, and there was 2 Tesco's tanker drivers next to me. And I could see in between the tanks, and it just seems like so much. It looked like smoke just coming out of the side of one of the containers. But where I've only been there 6 months, I didn't know. I just thought they might have been cooling off the tanks or whatever, and it just. But I didn't think nothing of it. But apparently the 2 Tesco drivers, they see it and all, and they went over to the office to get someone, in which time I pulled alongside the tank, sat there for another minute, and then as soon as the lorry left the loading bay, I pulled on and went to load the lorry. But I noticed the other drivers who was in the loading bays looking kind of puzzled, looking back at the tanks. So I got out of the lorry, and the guy from the Tesco drivers and that started walking away towards the gates, telling everyone to get away. So we just carried on walking towards the gates, leaving the lorries, shutting all the electric off. That's when all the plant shut down, all the electric went off immediately. And then all of a sudden we heard all the alarm bells ringing in the terminal, and we must have took 5 or 6 more steps, and then there was just a massive explosion. All stuff was flying past us, pipes and things like that, and we was walking up. We just picked ourselves up, don't know how far it threw us, and we just run towards the gates. We had to find holes in the gates because it's all secure there, and scramble through. The 5 drivers, there was 5 drivers I believe there, and 2 guys in the office where we get the bill of lading from. Apparently everyone got out. I looked round and I saw an old guy who works for me, Morris. He was finding it hard to run, so I went back, grabbed his arm, and we were dragging him down. It's then when I saw the flames, because I looked back and they was massive, they was huge, and I just felt like we wasn't far enough away from it, and we was just getting away from it as quick as we could, as far away as possible. Well, the force of the blast threw all of us forward onto the floor. I've hurt me back, it's hurt me back. It just felt like 3 or 4 men just really pushed you hard from behind. But other than that, everyone just seemed to get out miraculously, unarmed, just minor injuries. And when you see the extent of it on the TV, and when I think back and remember the big orange flash all round us, how it lit up the yard, the stuff flying past us, the shaking of the ground, and then I looked at the office where we get the bill of lading from, and it was just devastated. So all the buildings and equipment around us got so badly damaged, but every single one of us got out, got to our feet and managed to run. And we did run, we really did run. I've never run like that before.
Not surprised. What a remarkable story there. One of the people who was a little bit too close to the seat of the blast this morning, but man who got out in one piece, and it seems that everybody did this morning. 39 casualties, but luckily no fatalities in this huge blast here on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. Well, let's give you an update on where this smoke that you can see behind me has got to so far. One of our viewers is a pilot who landed in Southend and called in to say that he had been watching this smoke crossing the channel. He said it had gone out over the Thames estuary and out across, well, the North Sea, the channel area, and was heading in towards Belgium. Now, this is a photograph from one of our viewers taken from an aeroplane, not the same plane, but getting a pretty good view of that huge black smoke stack coming up, and then the cloud drifting away south-southeast of Hemel Hempstead out into the sky. So this would have been taken, I would thought, somewhere over the centre of London, as this plane was coming in perhaps towards Heathrow a bit earlier in the day. But our pilot saying the cloud, this black cloud now hanging about and drifting at a level around 2,500 feet out across the Thames estuary and on towards Belgium across the North Sea. And we can still see, I can actually see helicopters hovering over the site here in Hemel Hempstead, presumably trying to assess some of the damage there. Yeah. Just joined by local MP Mike Penning here, who himself was a former firefighter, so you know all about these things.
There's a bit of technical knowledge coming here on the side.
Yeah, what do you make of it? Well,
it's something that all firemen train for. I mean, I trained when I was in the fire service for just this sort of fire. Sadly, I had to go to one once in Essex with a refinery when it went like this. Visually, they're absolutely awful, and the power of the fire is quite astronomical. But we've got 150 plus firemen up there risking their lives for us here again today, doing a fantastic job. And actually, while this weather's like this, it's doing us great favours, because I just heard you saying that this is going across the channel. Well, the weather needs to stay like this, and it needs to get up in the stratosphere and away. What we don't want is cloud and rain, because that will bring it down quite quickly.
Not sure anybody's going to thank us for exporting this.
Well, these disasters happen, and it is a major disaster. It's not beating around the bush. It's an absolute miracle. I've just left the hospital where the A&E is. We've only got one person that's been kept in. All the other people that have been injured have been treated and discharged. And even the person that's in has got blast damage to his lung, but I understand it's not critical. And that's all fantastic. I've met people today that were within feet of the blast, and I've walked away with cuts and bruises. They're very lucky people.
It is the most remarkable aspect of it, really. I mean, it's a terrible disaster, but it's not a tragedy as such.
No, in life terms, which is the most important thing, it is not a disaster. We have lots of businesses have lost their livelihoods down here, and there's lots of buildings gone. There's millions of pounds gone up in smoke. However, we've not lost a single life, and that's the most important thing.
Are you getting any sense at all from the experts, the emergency services, as to what might have caused it?
What they have indicated to me, which I think is fair, is that they don't know the exact cause, but they're pretty sure there's no terrorism involved. They're pretty certain it was an accident. There was maintenance crews in there working this morning, so they do think that it was an accident. It doesn't appear to be anything else. There were early reports of a light plane crashing there. That doesn't seem to be any evidence of that. They seem quite confident that, as they don't know the exact subject of what the cause was, but it was an accident, and at the end of the day, that's also good news.
A lot of people have, the eyewitnesses this morning, your constituents around here, said, well, we woke up, terrible blast, and we thought, had a plane crash, could it be terrorism? Must have been a thought that's passed through many people's minds.
Of course, it went through my mind. I mean, I got the first call this morning at about 6 minutes past 6 from my staff telling me that there'd been a major incident, major explosion, and a series of explosions afterwards, small explosions. I'm very lucky I have the way I can contact the police. I spoke to my chief superintendent, who told me within minutes what the initial problem was, where I knew what was happening, and that was good news, because I know I could come on the air and talk to you people and actually say, look, yes, we've got a major incident, but hey up guys, it's not terrorism, we don't think, this is what we think it is. And the community's pulled together fantastically here today. We're a very tight-knit community. Over 2,000 people have been asked to leave their homes. Most of those have been taken in by loved ones and friends elsewhere in the town. I only have a couple of hundred at the reception centres. We may need more. There may be more people that need to be evacuated later. There may be a series of small explosions as some of the smaller tanks blow up. But there was 6 football fields well alight, as the description is up there. It's a major fire, which is impossible to put out in one go. We've got to let it burn itself out to a degree and then get an awful lot of foam onto it.
A couple of thousand people evacuated. What advice have you been able to offer them about how long it might be before they can go back home?
Well, what we don't want to do is give them false hopes about how quickly they can go and how quickly they can't. That's the last thing they want. We're trying to give them as much information as possible. The local leisure centres are open for them, completely free of charge. As I understand, Harry Potter's being shown to them as we speak. For those people that need that sort of help, a lot of have gone to friends and family. I've said to people, if you can stay with friends and loved ones tonight, do that. Clearly the industrial area tomorrow isn't going to be open, we don't think. There's some of the schools that are going to be closed. So listen to the local radio stations, listen to the TV like yourself, so we can get that information across to you. But there's no need to worry now. The bigger effort is now in there to damp it down and close it down. But actually it's probably going to take several weeks to completely clear this up, and then we can investigate what's going on. And hopefully tomorrow there'll be a statement in the House of Commons from the Minister, and I can ask him some relevant questions about the way it's gone. But actually, from the emergency services point of view, it's gone fantastically well. We should be very proud of them.
I had a quick thought about having a big storage depot like this in your backyard. Most people seem to have not ever been bothered about it until this happened.
It's part of the town. It was built when the town was developed. We're a new town. We were built in the 50s, over 50 years ago. It's been part of the town. And I think people will accept, and you've seen it here today, that these sort of accidents may well happen. It's part of our town. It's a major employer in the town, and we can't do without fuel wherever we put them. There'll be an investigation afterwards to see whether it's quite right when they rebuild it, because there's nothing left of it, whether it should be as close to residential areas as what we are now. Perhaps we've learned something in the last 50 years, but that's for later.
Mike Penning, local MP, thank you very much indeed. We'll have more for you at the top of the hour. Good afternoon from Hemel Hempstead. You're watching Sky News Live. 3 explosions rocked a key oil depot just outside the town centre at 6 a.m. this morning. 39 people have been injured, only 2 seriously. No fatalities. Residents have been forced out of their homes, cars, buildings, trees destroyed by the blast. The aftermath can be seen from above the clouds as the smoke from the fire spreads south and southeast. Police warn there could be more explosions, with the blaze expected to burn on for several days. We're going to be live throughout the area as firefighters still struggle to control the blaze and the investigations begin into the causes. So, huge fires continuing to burn just behind me, about less than a mile away, at a major oil depot, the 5th largest storage oil depot in the country. It was rocked by 3 explosions early today. The fire blast was heard at least 40 miles away, right the way around the southeast of England. Flames shot 200 feet into the sky. Clouds of black smoke continue to drift right the way across the region. Casualties are still being treated in hospital. 1 patient is now in intensive care in Watford, but police say they're treating the blasts as accidents. The M1 motorway is already being closed and it may remain shut between junction 6 and 10 until tomorrow morning. So let's take a look in detail at just what might have happened. The blast occurred at this Buncefield fuel terminal. It's at Leverstock Green, that's just on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. Nearby homes were damaged, homes and hotels were evacuated. Some 2,000 people have been asked to move away. The effects of the blast heard as far away as Oxfordshire, Surrey and Sussex. This is a major distribution terminal storing oil, petrol and kerosene, and it's a key supplier of aviation fuel to Heathrow, Luton and Stansted airports. The first explosion happened at just after 6 a.m. 2 smaller blasts were heard around 6:20 a.m. More than 100 firefighters were called in. They're still battling the flames down there at the plant, which have been rising some 200 feet into the air. There are also concerns over pollution. Smoke rising from the furnace of flames there has forced part of the M1, that's between junction 6 and 10, to close. That could continue through into tomorrow. And this large plume of smoke we now hear is heading out across the Thames estuary and on towards Belgium. Let's just bring you the best of the pictures so far as we try and describe the story of the events that have been happening here since 3 minutes past 6 this morning. Sky's Paul Brennan has it all.
The blast was so loud it woke people from their beds more than 40 miles away. A huge explosion just after 6 a.m, sending flames hundreds of feet into the air and turning the clear winter sky black with smoke. Tanker driver Terry Hine had arrived at the depot minutes earlier.
We went up to the end of the terminal where the holding tanks are, queued up as normal, but me and a couple of Texaco drivers noticed that there was a large mist coming down, rolling off the tops of the tanks, and so I pulled onto the bays, the loading bays, and noticed that everything had tripped out, all the electric. Where the guy in the bill of lading room in the office where you get your bill of lading, he turned everything off and ordered us all to leave, to get off the site as quick as possible. There was me and 5 other drivers. We was all kind of in a line walking towards the gate, and it was just a massive explosion.
First reports of the blast were followed within minutes by extraordinary footage captured by Sky News viewers on their mobile phones and home video cameras, including one clip which caught one of the secondary blasts.
Out of my daughter's bedroom, the flames were, which is right back over there, the flames are massive, and we didn't know what was going on, thought it was a bomb or an aeroplane going down, or we just didn't know.
Just went and bang, It sounded like something sounded like a missile or something. You know what? It wasn't, but it sounded like there was a big whoosh and a bang, and that was it. You know, frightened us all. We didn't know what to do. As you can see, the police and we only live around the corner. But our house is all right. There's other houses in the street that have had the windows blown out and whatever as well. So I don't know. It's all very frightening.
Damage to surrounding areas has been extensive. These viewers' photographs showing the power of the shockwave which ripped through neighbouring streets. Walls have collapsed and windows shattered. Had this been a weekday, the staff here would have been ripped to shreds by flying glass. Thankfully, at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, these business units were deserted. Dozens of residents from the neighbouring area of Leverstock Green have been evacuated to a leisure centre a safe distance away.
We thought we'd been broken into because we went downstairs and the whole of our patio door, it was all like, all the glass was shattered, it had been blown in. And so it wasn't until we went outside until we realised that it was a fire. Like the whole sky was just orange.
We went down into the lounge and the fireplace had blown out into the lounge. The landslider doors had blown off their tracks. All the doors were blown open.
Fire crews now face a daunting task to bring this blaze under control, but such is the intensity of the heat and the volatility of the materials involved, it's still too dangerous to actually enter the depot and attack the root of the blaze. Extra supplies of firefighting foam are being brought in from neighbouring fire brigade areas.
What we will do is gain enough foam stocks from neighbouring fire services such as Essex and also from the industry, and then really you work from the outside in, but you need enough foam to keep that going, because if you stop that attack at any time before you've done the whole site, then it will just reignite. So that's why it will take a bit of time to make sure we have enough foam stock.
Despite reassurances that petrol supplies will not be affected by the blast, nervous motorists have been ignoring the advice and jamming garage forecourts to fill up their tanks. Their panic buying may not be justified, but given the apocalyptic scenes so far today, it's entirely understandable. Paul Brennan, Sky News.
Well, those dramatic pictures put together by Paul Brennan earlier. Let me bring you some more dramatic pictures. You may hear in the distance the sound of a helicopter. Let's take you to our other high camera on a hoist overlooking. That's a police helicopter hovering right above the plant in the column of black smoke, and I think they're just on the outskirts of it, trying to assess the damage down below. There is a very serious concern of further explosions, as the police have said. There shouldn't be damaging to the surrounding area, but there are, with such an intense blaze down there below that helicopter, there are serious concerns that other storage tanks will eventually go up, and so the police have warned that there could be further explosions. You can see that helicopter almost suspended in the black cloud there, an extraordinary picture. And down below you can see just how dense and intense this column of black smoke is, leading down to the Buncefield plant, where I think you can see flames pulsing under the base of the black cloud, and that's where the seat of the explosion is. I think we're just pushing in to give you a better picture of those flames now, and that's I think that gives you a real feel of the enormity of this blast and the area that it's covered. It's thought that it may be as much as half of this huge Buncefield storage depot that has been damaged by the blast at 6 a.m. this morning. The fifth biggest storage area of its type in this country, and with flames like that still persisting down there, it's thought that they have to be left to basically burn themselves out. There's not much they can do. There's not much of a blanket can be put down to smother the flames or the clouds of fumes. It literally has to burn itself out, and the cloud above it disperse. And we were hearing that the cloud of this noxious looking smoke has now drifted right the way down southeast of here. It's keeping going across the southeast corner of London, out across the Thames estuary, out into the North Sea and the Channel. Some of it can be seen heading into towards Belgium, according to an airline pilot who rang us a short time ago. That cloud hovering mainly at around 2,500 feet as it heads southeast of here. Who better to ask about what it's doing and the direction it's heading in than our very own weather presenter Hazel Murray, who's tracking it for us. Hazel.
Well, Jeremy, as you say, we've been watching it spread further to the south and the east. Now, obviously, the area we're looking at is this black area. The white area is just ordinary cloud. Now, because we're under an area of high pressure, which in the southeast has been giving such cold ground and also clear skies, we've got what you call an inversion layer, which basically just means that this morning when the explosion took place, there was a cap, which meant that as the smoke went up, it could really only go up to about 1,000 feet, and then it hit that cap, and as a result it spread out, and you can see how it spread well out to the west, well out to the south, and indeed well out to the south towards London. Now, as we've gone through the morning, what we found is that the inversion layer has lifted just a little bit, the winds have become slightly more strong, so we have seen it pushing out further now. But what's going to happen tonight is that an area of cloud and rain, which is currently in the far northwest of Scotland, is gradually going to be working its way down the country. Now, it'll probably get down to here in the early hours of tomorrow morning. There isn't going to be much in the way of rain left on it, but what rain there is will actually wash the particulates down. In other words, the little black dust particles that are in this smoke will be washed down. So I think there's every possibility that some people will actually experience black rain. With that rain will come a slight increase in winds. So I think we'll see more drifting to the south. So more of these areas will see the cloud thickening up. We're already seeing the cloud thickening up in London, for instance, and I think that will continue to be the case. It's not real cloud, it is just the smoke thickening what cloud is already there. Once that rain has come through and its winds, then I think we'll find that the skies will clear and we go still again. Given that the fires are going to continue to burn for the next day or so, I think this is going to be something we'll be living with for the next day or so. Jeremy.
I think you're right, Hazel. What I can see from here is aiming to go by, then I think we're going to be living with it for quite a while. Let's just, I think we're going to go straight across the Emergency Services press conference in Welwyn.
I just want to, again, to remind you to turn off your mobile phones. We have here today Mr. Frank Whiteley, Chief Constable, Mr. Roy Wilshire, Chief Fire Officer.
It's Mr. Edwardson from the Ambulance Service.
And Jane Halpin from the Strategic Health Authority. The Chief Constable will be speaking first. Again, if you have any questions, you say them to the end, please, and say where you are and who you're from. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon again. I'll read you another prepared script and then I'll pass on to the fire service and due course health, and then, as I say, we'll take questions at the end. But good afternoon, thank you once again for attending the briefing, in which we hope to give you an operational update and some medical guidance around the effects of the smoke plume. Firstly, emergency services personnel continue to work to tackle the blaze and manage the large series of cordons around Hemel Hempstead. The role of police is extended to giving support to traffic management, assisting with refuge centres and supporting our colleagues in the fire service. I've just returned myself from the scene and I'd like to extend my appreciation to all the local residents affected by this for their forbearance, patience and I must say good humour in some quite trying circumstances in what has naturally been a difficult and worrying day for them. On behalf of the emergency services, I would like to reassure residents and local communities that everything will be done to ensure that you get all the advice and support that you need. Given the latest information on the fire is likely to continue for the next 24 hours or so, but clearly that is a moving picture and the Chief Fire Officer will give you a fuller briefing on that. That does mean, however, potentially extended disruption in the Hemel Hempstead area of Hertfordshire. In regard to this, we will try and keep our families and communities informed of the latest update, but at this point it's likely that schools in and around Hemel Hempstead will be closed tomorrow, and we would urge parents to check in regard to local schools, ideally through the Hearts Direct website, which is www.heartsdirect.org. If I can repeat that, www.heartsdirect.org. But also we'll try and pass the information out on local radio, and schools themselves will try and ring parents. It's likely also that libraries and day centres around the area will be affected, at least tomorrow. If I just very briefly recap on the events, the emergency services were contacted just after 6 a.m. this morning following reports of a series of explosions in the Buncefield area. Indeed, there have been further explosions during the course of the day. These were expected, and it is still possible that there will be further explosions on the site. But clearly the fire service will shortly give you a full update from their perspective. There were a number of staff at the depot at the time of the incident, and I'm pleased to say that we can now report they have all been accounted for. However, we will continue to run a casualty bureau, and that number is 0800 096 0095, and if I can repeat that, 0800 096 0095 for those who are concerned about people who were on the site. If ringing from overseas, the number is 0207 158 0125. In terms of an update on casualties, to date we believe 43 people have been seen who have sustained injuries, and I would emphasise that the vast majority of these are not serious injuries. All we believe bar 2 people have now been discharged, but clearly that situation can still change as the day goes on and people report to hospitals. One of the main concerns at the moment remains the very thick plume of smoke which continues to spread across the county. The contents of that smoke are clearly an irritant. It can make people cough, irritate their eyes, make them feel nauseous, and clearly for people who already have asthma and breathing difficulties, they will need to be especially careful. The advice has got to be and has got to remain, please keep out of the plume of smoke, stay indoors, close your windows and tune into local radio and television. If people are feeling unwell as a result of exposure to the smoke, please ring the NHS Direct on 0845 4647. That's NHS Direct on 0845 4647. Clearly, if people are feeling acutely unwell, then contact your out-of-hours doctor, or in a real emergency, the hospital. But we would really stress in the first instance NHS Direct. We clearly expect there to be continued extensive traffic disruption around the scene, and particularly to the M1 motorway for the immediate future. And again, I would appeal please for people not to travel to the area, to avoid the M1, and not to contact the emergency services at the current time unless you really have to do so. If I can now hand over to Chief Fire Officer Roy Wiltshire.
Thank you. I'm just going to give you a brief update from the fire service perspective. We have been informed by experts that this is possibly the largest incident of this kind in peacetime Europe, so it just puts some perspective on what we're dealing with. We have continued and completed a search of the blast area to ensure that there was no casualties left in the blast area, and as far as we can tell, we believe those areas are now clear. We have what we call cooling jets, so spraying water on those few tanks that remain, but a lot of those tanks are damaged by the blast and are buckling themselves, and there could well be more smaller explosions to come. Our plan of action is we have a team of our own fire experts, including experts from the oil industry, on working out a plan of attack to actually tackle the fire. What we need to do, as I said earlier, is to have enough resources and enough foam concentrate in place before we mount an attack. And those resources are starting to gather near the scene, and they're coming from as far away as Humberside and Lancashire, to make sure we have enough foam to put on the fire and sustain a continuous attack. Once that plan is in place, and we're talking very closely with our colleagues from all the services, from health and from police, we will, once everyone's ready, we will mount that attack on the fire. Thank you.
Okay, James, do you want to take the ambulance service?
Yes, good afternoon. From the health and ambulance service perspective, we received calls from this emergency just after 6 o'clock this morning. Because of the information we gleaned at that time, the ambulance service declared a major incident standby status, and that moved the health community into a major incident arrangement. We alerted the surrounding hospitals in Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire of that status, and those hospitals also enacted their plans. Surrounding ambulance services were also contacted, and 4 ambulance services had resources ready should we have needed them. Thankfully, at this present time, no casualties were in a life-threatening condition, and of the casualties taken to hospital, only 1 patient at this time is not of a fairly minor nature. 43 casualties have been dealt with by the health system to date, and most of those are at Hemel Hempstead General Hospital and the Watford General Hospital. The ambulance service has dealt with 9 casualties, and we've had further emergency calls during the day to people in the Hemel Hempstead area who've been affected by this emergency. Our GP colleagues have also dealt with just under 50 patients who've presented themselves or telephoned through the normal channels. We've also assisted our police colleagues who needed some specialist intervention about breathing difficulties from the scene. So far the emergency's been dealt with very well by the health community, and I'm pleased to say that all of the arrangements we have at this time worked extremely well on this occasion. I'm going to hand over to my public health doctor colleague who give a general overview of health in the community.
Thank you. Just to restate really what's already been said, the concerns that people may have about the plume of smoke, they should apply common sense. Stay indoors, keep the doors and windows closed. That's the best thing that people can do to not expose themselves to the smoke. The smoke's probably made up of things called hydrocarbons, which I won't go into detail about, but the potential health effects, particularly in the short term, are really only likely to affect people who already have respiratory illnesses such as asthma, such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. People with these sorts of conditions who are getting symptoms, the symptoms they're likely to be getting are things like coughing, wheezing, further shortness of breath. If people do get exposed and do have these symptoms, as has already been said, if the symptoms are minor and they want advice and reassurance, they should contact NHS direct. They should continue to take their usual medication. If they are not reassured by this or concerned, their GP out of hours service should be able to help them. However, if people do experience extreme shortness of breath or are in an emergency situation, clearly that's what their local hospitals are there for, but they're not really there for people who need that advice and reassurance. We have got work in hand to sample the smoke to be clearer about exactly what's in it and what it's made up of, and really we need to know more about this before we can understand what long-term implications there may be, if any, from this exposure. However, what I would restate is that those people who are most at risk are those people who have inhaled the smoke. So clearly, if you are worried and you've inhaled smoke, that's one thing. If it's a question of simply seeing the plume, although it may be quite frightening, it probably simply at a distance poses very little risk. The closer you are to these things, the more worried you are, and distance dilutes greatly the effects of this type of pollution.
Okay, just summarising, this has been, as you'd expect, a trying day, not least for the people living in the vicinity of this. There has been a magnificent response from the emergency services in the county, and I would certainly like to compliment all of the staff in the emergency services who've responded very well. Also from our partner agencies, local authority, and indeed now regional and national government. We've had all the assistance we could want. This incident is under control, but it will nevertheless be ongoing for at least another 24 hours. We're open to questions. Please.
Charles Richter from The Sun. Mr. Wiltshire, you said you'd made a search of the blast area.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to give us, no matter how preliminary it is, where the blast started? Was it in one of the tanks? Or do you have a cause? Or
I'm afraid we haven't that information at the moment, and I think my colleagues from the police are really dealing with the witnesses and calls.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of where it took place and so forth, it's far too early to be sure, but we are currently debriefing witnesses from the scene. This is obviously the people who were working there. And all we can say at the moment is there is nothing that indicates anything other than an accident on the site.
Can I just follow up on that, because Rob Chater, Daily Mirror.
Yeah.
So in an agency report in which a bricklayer who travels that road has done for 20 years, in the last week has seen foam seeping out of the area. and across the road, and assumed that there had been some kind of leak, either of fluid or of gas. Are you aware of that?
I can't confirm that either way at this moment, but if you've got details, we'd like to contact that individual.
Okay.
Further questions? Yes.
I just ask the fire service, how on earth do you go about investigating a fire of this magnitude?
It's a good question. The damage that a fire that intensity will cause may or may not leave clues behind for the fire investigation team. So I think we will be reliant, along with the police, on the witness statements and talking to the witnesses, certainly in conjunction with the police force. So that's probably going to be our best clue of how it happens and why it happens. Well, we're not sure. Obviously, you've seen the fire yourselves. You've seen the picture. Until we've put it out or it's burnt itself out, we won't be able to get in there until it's cooled down to actually find out what's left.
Can you see which part of the Buncefield depot the fire is starting? Was it in the aviation fuel end or was it in the normal petrol end?
Yeah. Again, I think that will come out in the investigation.
Chief Constable, can you give us any idea of how many domestic properties have been affected and how many people have been displaced?
I can't be precise at the moment. There has certainly been a number. Most of the blast, though, was felt on the industrial estate immediately behind the terminal, and that's where most of the damage to buildings has been done. But certainly within a reasonable radius of there has been damage to windows and things of that sort. We're not talking hundreds of people, but certainly dozens of people have been affected in that way and displaced from their houses.
Into the refuge centre?
Yes.
You said this was one of the biggest accidents in peacetime Britain. Can you give us a clue or an idea of how much extra foam you need? I mean, how much have you asked for from as far as, I think you said Humberside in Lancashire?
Well, at present we have a 250,000 litres of foam concentrate, which you mix with water to make the foam on the way to us. We're working with the oil industry experts to see if even that's enough. And I know we have had international offers of help if we need it.
How much if you mix that concentrate with water would you get? Would it be 4 times or?
Much more than that. We're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of litres of foam. So
that's 250,000 litres of concentrate?
Yes.
Does that mean millions of litres of foam?
Yes.
250,000.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So.
Do
you hold stock of foam in your own area?
Yes, we do.
How much is that, and has that run out, and that's why you've had...
Well, we've... it's not run out because we've not used the foam yet. Because before we start an attack on fire this size, you need enough foam to sustain the attack for as long as you need to attack the fire. Because if you put some on and then stop and it reignites, you've just wasted your resources.
Sorry, at the back.
Can you give us an idea of just how big the cordon is at the moment and how many people have been evacuated and how long they will be out of their homes for?
Yes, difficult to describe it, but basically, obviously, the terminal itself, all the industrial estate around it, and it's round about, I suspect, about half a mile away from the site in total. But it depends on which side of the site you are, exactly the dimensions of the cordon.
And in terms of the people who are in refuge centres at the moment, at what stage would you imagine they would be able to return to their homes?
That's really a public health issue. Once we've had the air sampled around there, then we would hope a very rapid return. But we would really wait until the air. We'd advise people to wait until the air has been sampled. Certainly, if those homes in the opposite direction to where the flume is going, I would hope that would be sooner rather than later. But I'm sure there'll be a public health announcement in regard to that as soon as we know. Yeah.
Mr. Whiteley, there was an agency report earlier on today that suggested that there was some looting going on. Are you aware of that, or has there been any looting?
I'd have to say we're not aware of any looting. We have a significant number of police officers in those cordons. who will ensure that looting doesn't take place, and if anybody contemplates that, and I've certainly no reason to believe they are doing, then they will be dealt with very severely. And in that respect, again, I'd like to thank particularly the Metropolitan Police, who've sent us many dozens of officers to assist with that function.
When do you think you'll be launching the attack on the fire?
Right, I think at best we're hours away from launching attack, and at worst it could wait until daylight tomorrow morning.
And how many vehicles do you need, do you think, to deliver this foam simultaneously?
This is one of the questions we're asking the experts in the oil industry, because we're really looking, if you look at a storage farm as we are now, it's in 5 separate what they call bunded areas, so that's held within walls, and we're trying to work out whether we need to make 5 simultaneous attacks or whether we can work our way in, and it's that sort of information we're after.
We've got time for one more question. Yeah.
Angela Knight from the St Albans Observer. I understand that people were pre-warned actually at the depot before the first explosion and subsequently were evacuated afterwards. Is that true, and is that one of the main reasons why we're looking at not having any fatalities at the site?
I confess at this stage it's too early to be certain. I mean, clearly we're debriefing witnesses at the moment, and that sort of fact will all be very clear tomorrow, but it's too early to say. Okay, can we call it a day at that? And Colin will obviously talk to you about details of any further press updates. Thank you.
So the very latest information from that multi-services press conference out of Welwyn there. We heard from the police, the fire service, the ambulance service, and from the local health authority there with some very interesting updated information, and perhaps to put it into scale, the words of the fire officer there saying this is the largest such incident of its type in peacetime Europe, which perhaps gives it some perspective there. And the fire service talking about what they're going to need to try and deal with it, and these live pictures we're bringing you now from just a half a mile away from where I'm standing at the moment. You can still see that intense glow of the blaze right in the seat of the fire where the blast happened this morning in the middle of this Buncefield oil depot, and you can tell from that the fire is still well and truly underway. Bear in mind this happened at 6 this morning, so we're talking about 9.5 hours since the blast happened and still going strong. And what the fire service was saying is that they're going to mount a concerted attack when they have all the equipment in place, and basically attack it with foam. And they're bringing in experts from the fire brigade and also from the oil industry to prepare an attack on the flames, and they can try and bring them under control. And what they'll use is foam. He said that there were 250,000 litres of foam concentrate on the way. They'll then mix that up into a big foam which can be sprayed onto the area. The hope that it'll start dampening down the worst of the fire there. But it's, as the fire chief was saying, no point in starting that attack until they're ready with all the right equipment and they have sufficient foam, because there has to be a concerted and long-term attack with foam, so that they have to keep it going until the fire is damped down. But the thought is that fire could be going for another 24 hours yet, and the smokestack above it, and until the fire is finally put out, till some of these storage bunkers there in Buncefield are finally out of fuel. This smokestack is like to continue, this huge column of black smoke. Chief Constable of Hertfordshire, Frank Whiteley, saying that he expected the fire to continue for another 24 hours. Around, he was talking about the number of people who have been evacuated, quite a number of people. The local MP was telling me maybe as many as 2,000 people have been evacuated, now staying with friends and family around the region. The Chief Constable is saying that schools in the Hemel Hempstead area are going to be closed tomorrow, along with probably day centres and libraries. More information will be coming out from the local authorities there to advise parents about what schools are going to be open and what schools are going to be closed. On the whole question of casualties, basically the emergency services picked up 39 casualties. All but 2 of them have been discharged now, a couple of people quite seriously injured, mainly respiratory problems there. And the general advice was for people in the area, just use your common sense, stay out of that smoke. It may not necessarily be toxic, but it is full of hydrocarbons. It'll be very unpleasant. It'll irritate the eyes, it'll irritate the nose, it'll irritate the lungs as well. So anybody with any respiratory problems that like to find themselves considerably irritated by this smoke. So stay out of it, stay well clear of the smoke. If you're at home, then batten down the hatches, stay in, close your house down, and tune in to TV stations and local radio to get the very latest information on that. And the ambulance service and local health authorities saying that there had been more casualties, quite a number of people, about 50 patients had reported to their local GPs for help, mostly people suffering from breathing difficulties there. So that's the headlines really out of the press and news conference there given by police, ambulance, fire and health services. Let's bring in our experts in the studio, both of them well versed in the question of disasters in this country. Roger Young, a member of the Institute of Civil Defence and Disasters Study, a former policeman himself, and Jeff Charlton from Disasters UK, both of them listening to that press conference. Roger Young, some interesting points coming out there, a little bit more information starting to emerge about what may have happened and what measures are being taken in the aftermath.
Yes, I think what was interesting for me was you see the structures of the command, the Gold Command, the Silver Command, all now well established, multi-agency, working really well, and news coming out in a coordinated way, driven by expertise, driven by proper intelligence, and that's just good news for the public.
The attack, as the fire chief called it, on the blaze itself, is that sort of pretty standard procedure, do you think?
Well, as a non-fire expert, really, I guess that it would be. What was interesting for me was that he was talking about the 5 areas within this site, and there, I think that they're going to have to really think through whether they're going to attack one big site-wide approach or 5 smaller ones. And if they do 5 smaller ones, will they be all at the same time, or do 5 consecutive smaller attacks? He is faced with a number of options, and he will not be able to make his decisions until he's taken the very best advice, which sounds as if it's on its way to him now.
Bring in Jeff Charlton from Disasters UK. Jeff, I suppose one of the crucial things, and probably one of the most difficult things, is assessing the scale of the problem on the ground when there is still an immense blaze going on there, and also the whole area, of course, cloyed with this column of black smoke. It must be tough to assess what needs doing.
Yeah, I guess it will be. I think the services are clearly in control of the site, although a lot seems to have revolved around luck and obviously the courage and the professionalism of the blue light services. But we're still not, we're still looking at a disaster in past tense, and we ought to be using some foresight about tomorrow. This cloud, where is it going to go tomorrow? Is it going to go towards London? Is it going to go towards our financial districts? Should we now be starting to look at, are we going to say to people, come into work, you should wear a mask or a respirator, or you shouldn't come to work? Should the buildings now, but people starting to look at how to control the environment within the buildings? This is going to be tomorrow morning, people will be scratching their heads. They should be planning now, and some advice should be coming from governments. They should be able to tell us where the plume's likely to go. If they can't, then that's going to show an awful huge gap in our defences against future problems, from terrorism to natural disasters.
You're surprised, are you? I mean, we've just heard that news conference. Quite a bit of information came out of it, some good advice on staying out of the smoke and so on, some advice on what they're doing to tackle the blaze. You're feeling a little bit short-changed, are you, on the broader information that would be needed to continue life and business in Britain tomorrow morning?
Absolutely. The information we've been given is stay out the smoke. I think a 5-year-old could have given us that information. What's next? We need now to know what we're going to do if the smoke comes towards us. We know it's toxic. It contains polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, volatile organic compounds. This is probably the same, if you went anywhere near that and started breathing it in, it's probably the same as smoking 400 cigarettes. You know, it's not going to do anybody any good. Will they come to work tomorrow, and should they come to work tomorrow? We need some people to give us advice. If they're going to say, we ought to get a statement now to say, for example, the smoke will not come, or we don't, there's a 90% chance that the smoke will not come towards the central business districts of London. Canary Wharf could be covered in soot tomorrow, or smoke. Should people come to work? Are you inviting people to come into a hazard zone? I think that's the reality. I'd like to see some information from some superior people saying this is what the national picture is, not just the local picture of that poor community that's been affected. The national picture. We've heard that the smoke is going towards Belgium. That's not unusual. This smoke could go right across Europe. We need to know what we're going to do tomorrow.
Well, Roger Young, as a member of the Institute of Civil Defence and Disaster Studies, I mean, can you picture what's going on behind the scenes? What agencies are involved? What chain of command is taking place now? And therefore, I assume that the very things that Jeff's talking about are being addressed, and presumably we will be told at some stage.
Yeah, I'm slightly more confident than Jeff in that I believe that the Chief Constable indicated that he's getting all the help he needs from local and national government, which tends to indicate that COBRA, the Cabinet Office Briefing Room, is either set up or is in the advisory stage of being set up, and that they will be issuing appropriate advice in the hours that are coming on. Jeff's points are very strong, absolutely right, but I actually believe that will be forthcoming.
I suppose there's a difficult balance, Roger, in these instances between too little information and too much information. You don't want the whole of South East Britain panicking about this. On the other hand, you want them to be able to proceed with their lives on well-informed basis.
Yeah, that's it. And as you say, it's always it's a tightrope that the senior commanders will be walking between trying to calm down panic and actually inform accurately. And it's informing accurately that is time consuming, because you need to suck in so much information. And as we've seen from the weather forecast, it is not an accurate science. And so if they were to say something and it subsequently proved to be either inaccurate or not very accurate, then that would have been almost worse than saying nothing at all.
Roger Young and Jeff Chant, as always, thanks for staying with us and guiding us and giving us some expert views on this through the course of the day. For a moment, we'll just take a little breather and bring you more on what's been happening and what's continuing to happen in this area around Buncefield after this morning's explosions. That's on Sky News, coming up.
Everybody's waiting for the man with the bag. Christmas is here again.
Films on Sky Movies for the very first time. Give your home a little bit of peace on earth this Christmas, even if it is just for an hour or two. Upgrade to Sky Movies for this Christmas. Call 08705 166 661 now and we'll switch you on.
Do you have the code? The Armani Code. Fragrance for Men by Giorgio Armani.
Bless you for being an angel, or building a new dream, just when my old dream crumbled so helplessly.
Just because you wear dentures doesn't mean you can't have fun with your food. Polygrip's Easy Control Tip applies thin strips to control the amount and hold dentures in. With Polygrip, everything's on the menu.
To celebrate the launch of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Lenore is giving you the chance to win a family trip to New Zealand, the location for the magical world of Narnia. Lose yourself in your wardrobe with Lenore. The pleasure's all yours.
Online now at Sony Style or in-store at Sony Centres. Find all the latest and best Sony Vaio laptops, like the exclusive ultra-compact S5 with 120GB hard drive and looks to die for. With the latest Intel Centrino mobile technology, enjoy the freedom of wireless digital entertainment and a refund of up to £240 on BT broadband and wireless router. In-store at Sony Centres or online at sonystyle.co.uk.
The main headlines now on Sky News. Key oil depot here at Hemel Hempstead still in flames after being rocked by 3 huge explosions just after 6 this morning. Some 43 people have been injured, but only 2 seriously, no fatalities. The depot's divided into 2, one half's been destroyed. Police have just confirmed they're still treating the blasts as accidents and all staff have now been accounted for. The first explosion was heard over 40 miles away, while nearby residents said they were woken by a huge boom as their houses shook. 2 more explosions were heard later. Police say explosions are expected. The fire is likely to continue to burn for another 24 hours. The fire service say it is the largest such incident of its type in peacetime Europe. 2,000 people have been evacuated from homes around the depots. Others are being warned to stay indoors as the smoke continues to billow into the skies. This image taken from an aeroplane by a Sky viewer shows. And we've just heard the Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott's on his way to visit the scene. Now, truck driver Terry Hine was at the depot when the explosion occurred earlier. He was just about 500 feet away and says he's lucky to have survived. A short while ago he told Sky News about the lead up to the blast.
It was just a normal day. We just pulled in, we have to queue up. I was at the front of a queue because all the lorries were in the loading bays filling up. But I could see in between the tanks, the storage tanks, we're facing them with our backs towards the entrance gate. So we're looking at the storage gates and there was 2 Tesco's tanker drivers next to me. And I could see in between the tanks and it just seems like so much, it looked like smoke just coming out of the side of one of the containers. But where I've only been there 6 months, I didn't know. I just thought they might have been cooling off the tanks or whatever. And it just, but I didn't think nothing of it, but apparently the 2 Tesco drivers, they see it and all, and they went over to the office to get someone, in which time I've pulled alongside the tank, sat there for another minute, and then as soon as the lorry left the loading bay, I pulled on and went to load the lorry, but I noticed the other drivers who was in the loading bays looking kind of puzzled, looking back at the tanks. So I got out of the lorry, and the guy from the Tesco drivers and that started walking away towards the gates, telling everyone to get away. So we just carried on walking towards the gates, leaving the lorries, shutting all the electric off. That's when all the plant shut down, all the electric went off immediately. And then all of a sudden we heard all the alarm bells ringing in the terminal, and we must have took 5 or 6 more steps, and then there was just a massive explosion. All stuff was flying past us, pipes and things like that, and we was walking up. We just picked ourselves up, don't know how far it threw us, and we just run towards the gates. We had to find holes in the gates because it's all secure there, and scramble through. The 5 drivers, there was 5 drivers I believe there, and 2 guys in the office where we get the bill of lading from. But apparently everyone got out. I looked round and I saw an old guy who works for me, Morris. he was finding it hard to run, so I went back, grabbed his arm, and we were dragging him down. It's then when I saw the flames, because I looked back, and they was massive, they was huge, and I just felt like we wasn't far enough away from it, and we was just getting away from it as quick as we could, as far away as possible. Well, the force of the blast threw all of us forward onto the floor. I've hurt me back, it's hurt me back. It just felt like 3 or 4 men just really pushed you hard from behind. But other than that, everyone just seemed to get out miraculously, unarmed, just minor injuries. And when you see the extent of it on the TV, and when I think back and remember the big orange flash all round us, how it lit up the yard, the stuff flying past us, the shaking of the ground, and then I looked at the office where we get the bill of lading from, and it was just devastated. So all the buildings and equipment around us got so badly damaged, but every single one of us got out, got to our feet, managed to run, and we did run. We really did run. I've never run like that before.
You don't look in particularly good shape, but at least you're smiling.
Yeah,
Tell us your story.
Well, I was lying in bed at 6 o'clock this morning when all of a sudden I was just hit with a massive force, which turned out to be the bedroom windows, complete with frames and everything. And somehow, although I was asleep, bits of glass got in my eye, and so been down and had it sort of washed out, and back now trying to put the house back together with one eye.
How are you feeling?
I feel fine. I felt really shook up at the time because they've got my wife and the children in the house with me, and once I sort of satisfied myself in a few seconds that they were okay, there was then, well, what had happened? It looked like a truck had come through the side of the house. So is there something in the house? Is it going to explode? Are we better off being outside? Should we stay inside? So just sort of mad panic, on top of which I couldn't see anything. We got to a point in the end where I thought, actually, although I feel like I want to be with my family, I'm so completely useless that I'd better just go down to A&E and get myself straightened out. So got straightened out, they've got some glass out, I'll be okay. We're just sort of sticking things back together, but the patio doors are on the patio, the garage doors are on the drive, the bedroom's sort of staved in. My wife's not best amused, and
well, I mean, the first thing is, personally, we're very pleased that you're pretty much in one piece.
I'm absolutely amazed at the number of injuries, and the seriousness of them is so low. That's fantastic.
And yet you'd lived with this thing pretty much in your back garden, Buncefield.
I'd never thought about it. Absolutely, never thought about it at all. No.
Never seen it as a threat.
Never seen it as a threat. Indeed, when the explosion occurred, that wasn't really what I was thinking of. There's actually a Calagas depot, and because it felt as if something weighing a huge amount had come into the house and flattened me, I thought it was Calagas bottles going up. So no, I'd never thought about that. And I dare say, in due course, I won't think about it again.
I mean, one or two people, obviously, one of the early thoughts was, crikey, a plane's come down, or it could be a terrorist attack. I guess
yes.
There was a scramble of things going through.
There was. My children were awake when it occurred, and they mentioned that the house had been shaking. And so then you think, well, why was it shaking before the blast? But a neighbour who's an engineer says with a big blast you often get some early sort of lower pressure waves that arrive before the big one.
So it felt like sort of tremors, did it?
According to my children, I was fast asleep. We'd had an enjoyable evening last night, so I was sleeping it off, as I say.
Well, that'll clear your head anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
How near do you live to Buncefield?
We're somewhere between half a mile, quarter of a mile, about a half a mile. Nothing between us and the oil depot. In terms of sort of large structures that would have protected us, we've got there's a disused railway line, the Nicky line, that runs along the back of the house, and we're slightly low against that. So that may have given us a little bit of shelter, but the damage is very particular. There'll be one house like ours which is really quite badly damaged, then two or three which don't look as if they've been affected at all, and then another which is...
So it's almost like shock waves hit you, was it?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, what it felt like, it honestly felt like someone had thrown a massive boulder into the house that had hit me, but it must have been shockwaves. Because when you look at the house, it's most peculiar. There are some very substantial structures, like patio doors completely demolished, but flimsy fences which are completely unaffected.
How do your neighbours fare? Are you in
no, we're not.
Yeah,
we're in an estate. I'm the only one who managed to pick up an injury for my sins, but lots of window damage. We're a bit concerned about the structural damage because it's clear that some roofs have lifted a little bit. So we're sort of clearing up the stuff you can see, and we're hoping that stuff doesn't come down and land on us. And
I was going to say, I mean, you've got a wife and young family at home.
Yeah.
Has that smokestack now become as big a worry as anything else?
Not particularly, because it's so visible. If it was sort of invisible fumes, then
you don't know what's in it, do you?
You don't know what's in it, but you can smell it and you can see it, or rather, you can't smell it at the moment. And we're close enough to the countryside that if we see it heading our way, we'll disappear. We've put panels in all the windows and the doors that have been knocked out, so we're happy that we can go if we have to.
And what are you thinking at the moment? Stay put?
Absolutely, stay put. No. We've added to the sort of the usual weekend list of 36 chores, including sort of tidying up the garden, and there's now tidying up all the damage. So no, we'll absolutely stay put and get it done if we possibly can.
Well, I mean, you're being very stoical about all this, but I mean, it must have been one heck of a shot this morning.
I was quite wobbly at 6:05. Yeah. When we didn't know what was going on, and when of course the house looks just such a mess, as I suppose. I mean, it's the first time I've ever been in a situation like this, but I guess now we've cleared up. Although the damage is bad, it's not the complete whirlwind of havoc that it appeared at.
Well, and you and your family are in pretty much one piece. Which
Absolutely, we are. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the day.
Ian Stowe's remarkable story, one of many lucky escapes today, as the people in this area thank their lucky stars that it was a Sunday morning.
Come on, love. My blocked nose keeps me up every night. How's this going to help?
The same way it helps my snoring every night.
Until you try it for yourself, it's hard to believe the instant nasal congestion relief that comes from Breathe Right strips. Their reflex action gently opens nasal passages to help you get more air. Breathe better, sleep better with Breathe Right.
I'm wishing on a star.
True Star, now a fragrance from Beyonce and Tommy Hilfiger.
The gate is open. With Bulldog, unlimited phone calls to your network friends are included. Unlimited Bulldog to Bulldog calls. Call now on 08000 15 16 17. Bulldog, broadband and phone.
When you enjoy life, you want to enjoy it to the full. And Optical Express Laser Vision Correction helps you do exactly that, from only £395 per eye. Optical Express, one of Europe's leading eye care specialists, provide only qualified, experienced ophthalmic surgeons with a combined experience of over 100,000 procedures carried out worldwide. Expert aftercare is included in the price, and interest-free credit is available. For your free information pack or to arrange a free consultation, just call Optical Express today on 08702 20 20 20 for laser vision correction from only £395 per eye. Optical Express. Eye care, we care.
Reason 273. A 12-pack of Pepsi, Diet Pepsi or Pepsi Max, now only £1.99. More reasons to shop at Morrison's.
Come on, hurry up!
Later, Mum.
I'm wishing on a star to follow where you are.
True Star, now a fragrance from Beyonce and Tommy Hilfiger.
Okay. Dear Santa, I've been a good boy this year. Babysitting, dog walking and unblocking my son's drains. So what I'd like for Christmas is Sky TV. which is only 149 quid for a whole year's worth of entertainment. Gregory Henderson, age 61 3/4. P.S. I'm all right for socks.
Give Sky TV as a gift. Call 08704 15 15 14.
Good afternoon from Hemel Hempstead as we stand beneath a huge pall of black smoke. It marks what happens at 6 o'clock this morning. 3 explosions rocked a key oil depot just outside this town at around 6 a.m. 43 people were injured, only 2 have been detained in hospital, no fatalities remarkably. 2,000 residents have been forced from their homes, cars, buildings, trees, all destroyed in the wake of the blast. People have been warned to stay inside as the black smoke from the fire spreads out to the south and the east. Police warned there could be more explosions. The blaze will probably burn for at least another 24 hours and nearby schools are likely to be closed tomorrow. We're live throughout the area on Sky News as firefighters still struggle to control the blaze and the investigations begin into why it happened. Good afternoon. It is, according to the fire service, the largest incident of its kind in peacetime Europe. A huge fire burning at a major oil depot just behind me. It all began with 3 explosions early this morning. The first heard up to 40 miles away. It sent flames 200 feet shooting into the early morning sky. Some 43 people are now known to have been injured. Fortunately, only 2 seriously enough to be detained in hospital and no fatalities. Neither is there a life-threatening condition. Police say the blaze is likely to burn for another 24 hours. Schools in the area will be closed tomorrow. The Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott's on his way here to the site to see what happened and to talk to police. They believe that it was all an accident, though. So let's just look in detail at what appears to have happened and what the aftermath was. Now, the blast happened at this Buncefield fuel terminal in Liverstock Green, just on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. Nearby homes were damaged, hotels were evacuated, with the effects of the blast heard as far away as Oxfordshire, Surrey and Sussex. It's a major distribution terminal, in fact the 5th biggest storage depot for oil, petrol and kerosene in the country, and it's a key supplier of aviation fuel to airports like Heathrow, Luton and Stansted. The first explosion happened at 3 minutes past 6 this morning. 2 smaller blasts were then heard at around 6:20 a.m. More than 100 firefighters are battling the flames which have been rising hundreds of feet into the air all day. There are also concerns over health, pollution, air quality. Smoke rising from the flames has already forced part of the nearby M1 motorway to close between junctions 6 to 10 to be precise. That could stay closed tomorrow as well. And this large plume, this column of smoke could be heading eastwards. Some reports say it's up to 9,000 feet and heading on towards Belgium. Sky's pulled. We've got some pictures of John Prescott. Here we are. Deputy Prime Minister is getting in his car, about to head off to Buncefield to take a look for himself. He won't be able to get too close, of course. It's still burning and blazing brightly down there where the seat of the explosions took place this morning. But John Prescott, who as Deputy Prime Minister is in overall charge of these. There is some suggestion that Cobra, the Cabinet Office committee rooms, will be opened up and that a special emergency committee will be set up to oversee this whole crisis control. And there we are, as the night closes in here, you can see even more vividly than we have done for the last few hours, the flames blazing up in the heart of that huge column of smoke. Just to take you back to the start today and guide you through the events of the day so far, let's hear this report from Sky's Paul Brennan.
The blast was so loud it woke people from their beds more than 40 miles away. A huge explosion just after 6 a.m, sending flames hundreds of feet into the air and turning the clear winter sky black with smoke. Tanker driver Terry Hine had arrived at the depot minutes earlier.
We went up to the end of the terminal where the holding tanks are, queued up as normal, but me and a couple of Texaco drivers noticed that there was a large mist coming down, rolling off the tops of the tank, and so I pulled onto the bays, the loading bays, and noticed that everything had tripped out, all the electric, where the guy in the bill of lading room in the office where you get your bill of lading, he turned everything off and ordered us all to leave, get off the site as quick as possible. There was me and 5 other drivers. We was all kind of in a line walking towards the gate, and it was just a massive, massive explosion.
First reports of the blast were followed within minutes by extraordinary footage captured by Sky News viewers on their mobile phones and home video cameras, including one clip which caught one of the secondary blasts.
Out of my daughter's bedroom, the flames were, which is right back over there, the flames are massive, and we didn't know what was going on. Thought it was a bomb or an aeroplane going down, or we just didn't know.
Just went and bang, it sounded like something, sounded like a missile or something. You know what, it wasn't, but it sounded like there was a big whoosh and a bang, and that was it. Frightened us all. We didn't know what to do. As you can see, the police and we only live around the corner, but our house is all right. There's other houses in the street that have had the windows blown out and whatever as well, so I don't know. It's all very frightening.
Damage to surrounding areas has been extensive. These viewers' photographs showing the power of the shockwave which ripped through neighbouring streets. Walls have collapsed and windows shattered. Had this been a weekday, the staff here would have been ripped to shreds by flying glass. Thankfully, at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, these business units were deserted. Dozens of residents from the neighbouring area of Leverstock Green have been evacuated to a leisure centre a safe distance away.
We thought we'd been broken into because we went downstairs and the whole of our patio door, it was all like, all the glass was shattered, it had been blown in. And so it wasn't until we went outside until we realised that it was a fire. Like the whole sky was just orange.
We went down into the lounge and the fireplace had blown out into the lounge. The landslider doors had blown off their tracks. All the doors were blown open.
Fire crews now face a daunting task to bring this blaze under control, but such is the intensity of the heat and the volatility of the materials involved, it's still too dangerous to actually enter the depot and attack the root of the blaze. Extra supplies of firefighting foam are being brought in from neighbouring fire brigade areas.
What we will do is gain enough foam stocks from neighbouring fire services such as Essex and also from the industry, and then really you work from the outside in, but you need enough foam to keep that going, because if you stop that attack at any time before you've done the whole site, then it will just reignite. So that's why it will take a bit of time to make sure we have enough foam stock.
Despite reassurances that petrol supplies will not be affected by the blast, nervous motorists have been ignoring the advice and jamming garage forecourts to fill up their tanks. Their panic buying may not be justified, but given the apocalyptic scenes so far today, it's entirely understandable. Paul Brennan, Sky News.
Well, the latest developments are that the Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, has been in the area. He's just been over into the Hertfordshire Police Headquarters, visiting Gold Command Team, as it's known. They're the people who will have taken control of the crisis centre today as they try and sort out what needs to be done and how to cope with the various aspects of the aftermath of these huge explosions this morning. And as you can see, this is the scene that will greet the Deputy Prime Minister very shortly as he drives over to get as close as he can for his own eyewitness view of the fire that is still raging intensely right across this Buncefield oil depot, the 5th largest oil depot, storage depot of its type in the country. The fire brigade were telling us a short time ago that this is the largest such incident in peacetime Europe. In fact, thinking back to early in my reporting career, I can remember probably the last biggest explosion of this type. It was up on Humberside at Flixborough chemical plant on the outskirts of Scunthorpe that went up with a terrible explosion also at a weekend, which luckily reduced the number of casualties, but some 30 people died in that, and that was another intense blaze that burned on, looking very similar to this. And since then, this has probably been the biggest single explosion of its type. It's believed that at least half of this Buncefield oil storage depot has been destroyed. We're hearing from fire brigade sources that that at least half of the fuel stocks have been destroyed. Many of the tanks that are still burning, of course, are starting to reduce in size all the time as the fuel is burnt off and heads up into this evening sky on this chilly December Sunday afternoon. Now, what the fire brigade were telling us from the news conference a bit earlier, is they're going to eventually attack, as they call it, attack the fire. But to do that, they need, one, a lot of information, and two, they need all the resources to fight it. Basically, they'll use foam concentrate. These are extraordinary pictures, of course, from the helicopter high in the sky above there. That gives you a much better view, I think, of the scale of it. Looking out across that Buncefield plant, you can see the massive column of black smoke that, as we've been witnessing all day, pouring out from Hemel Hempstead and spreading down towards the M1, the M25, and down into East London, and now across the North Sea and out onto the continent as well. And those flames still burning very brightly there. Now, what the fire brigade want to do is, as they describe it in technical terms, is to attack the fire. But what they need is to get sufficient foam concentrate in place that they'll then mix with water that they're going to draw from the nearby Grand Union Canal. And they then basically put it into almost huge cannons, 6-gun cannons, as they know, which will fire the liquid foam out onto the site. But they need sufficient supply so that they can sustain the attack. As one of the fire experts was telling me a short time ago, no point in starting to attack the fire if you haven't got the wherewithal to keep that attack going until you finally blanket the fire. And what you're doing with this blanket of foam on the flames there would be to starve it, suffocate it of oxygen, and finally that would allow the fire to die down. No oxygen, no fire is the theory, but they're having to bring in supplies of this foam concentrate from all over the country, from up in the north of England, from Humberside and from Lancashire. It's believed there's another 100,000 litres over in Holland that can be brought over in a matter of hours. Altogether, they were saying at the news conference a short time ago, they probably need around 250,000 litres of the concentrate to mix with tons and tons of water to make the foam mix that will be spread out on the fire. Probably won't happen until daylight comes tomorrow morning. By that time they'll have all the resources in place. Fire brigade also stressing, of course, that their staff safety is of a priority, and with the flames being as intense as they are at the moment, the main thing is to make sure that none of the fire staff are put at unnecessary risk or jeopardy by getting too close to a fire of this massive proportion. One of the main problems on the site as well is that all the fire mains appear to have been destroyed. From the early reconnaissance trips over the last few hours into the site, they've been able to get near enough to realise that there's precious little of the firefighting infrastructure left on the site. So the next thing is to get all the resources in place ready to attack that blaze, presumably from downwind tomorrow, but it probably won't begin until the morning. In the meantime, this blaze is likely to continue, and there is also a warning from the authorities there could be further explosions. One of the things is that there are still storage tanks there that could blow up as the fire spreads around this huge storage site. For that reason, quite a number of the roads around the area, including the M1, have been closed off. Several smaller roads, as well as the main arterial routes, closed because the emergency services want to make sure that there are no members of the public anywhere near should there be the risk of further explosions in the area. So the latest pictures we have take you even closer than ever before, right inside the cordon itself. These pictures just, I think, give you the most vivid view so far of the intensity of the fire, and you can see why it's such a monumental task to try and fight that for the firefighters involved. This is raging, presumably at several thousand degrees of heat, and over a pretty wide area still. The authorities were talking, the emergency services were talking about 5 distinct areas where there are fires going on within the Buncefield compound. It's a pretty big storage area as well. So it's a matter of how they attack those fires, whether it is one concerted attack or whether they move from storage bunker to storage bunker. We'll presumably get more details as the evening goes on, as the plans to fight this fire crisis continue in their state of preparation at the moment. But incredible scenes these. And as you can imagine from the state of those flames from just on the edge of the compound there, the plumes of smoke going up in the night sky, which are being driven and fueled literally by the petrol and the oil stored in that area. That column of black smoke is as dense and intense as it has been for the last 10 hours pretty much now, since the explosion at 6 o'clock this morning, and that column of smoke continues, and it is dominating our skyline here, and it is heading many a mile down south and southeast of here, across the M1 and the M25 motorways, across London, out across the Thames estuary and beyond. And Sky's own weather presenter Hazel Murray's been keeping a good track on it today, and can give us a better idea of where it's heading at what speed and at what height, Hazel.
Yes, Jeremy. Well, of course, as far as this is concerned, it really depends on how long these fires continue to burn. Now, originally we thought that it was unlikely that they would be completely put out before a couple of days has passed. Now, if that's the scenario, I think we're going to live with a lot of smoke in the southeast. If, on the other hand, they do manage to tackle it quite successfully tomorrow morning, well, that's a different thing. Now, what happened this morning was, because of the area of high pressure that's been giving the clear skies and very cold weather, in particular cold ground to the southeast, we've got this inversion layer, which basically just means a layer of warm air which is stopping the smoke going too far up. It's basically about 1,000 feet or so. That was what happened this morning. So when the smoke couldn't go up anymore, well, it spread out, and you can see how far west it spread, how far east it spread, and indeed it's spreading right the way down into the southeast, into parts of northern and eastern London in particular, turning very gloomy as the sun sets. And it's nothing to do with the sun setting, it is in fact to do with the area of pollution and smoke in the sky, incidentally giving a rather spectacular sunset. Now, the point being that overnight, if we take a look at what's happening, you can see that we've got an area of cloud and rain working its way southwards. Now, the rain is not going to be particularly heavy. In fact, as it comes southwards, it's going to die out. But it will stir the wind up a bit, and I think that will drive the area of mist and smoke further southwards. The effect of any rain that does fall is that it's going to wash those particles out of the smoke, if you like. So we could literally be seeing black rain in places. So that will have quite a cleansing effect. So it's really what happens tomorrow, because basically we're going back to the conditions that we had first thing this morning. Once this area has gone through, the wind is going to be coming in from the northeast, and it's going to be driving that smoke southwards. So if we take a look at it again, you can see that basically that area is going to be pushing its way further southwards. Now, with the clear skies we've still got over the next couple of days, and the very light winds, we're basically looking at the same conditions as this morning. So if we've still got smoke around, and it does seem likely that some of those fires are going to be burning for the next day or so, then I think there's every possibility that we will all be living with the aftermath in the southeast before it gradually manages to push its way southwards across the channel. But if we take a look back again at where it is at this moment, or our latest picture of it, you can see that basically it's still hanging around in the southeast. and as that pushes its way southwards, so we'll see it cross across the channel slowly, and we'll see it making its way into the rest of Europe. But if those fires continue to burn beyond, say, tomorrow evening, then I think this area of smoke will continue to hang around in southeast England.
It's quite a thought. Hazel, thanks very much. Much better idea of where it's all going to end up than from Hazel there. Well, let's just remind you about the key points from this extraordinary story today. This key oil depot near Hemel Hempstead is still in flames tonight after being rocked by 3 huge explosions just after 6 a.m. this morning. 43 people were hurt, 2 of them seriously. The depot's divided into 2. One half is completely destroyed, and all its fuel stocks. Police say they're still treating the blasts as accidents, and that all the staff there have now been accounted for. 250,000 litres of foam concentrators on the way to the scene for firefighters so that they can start tackling the blaze with foam. That's expected to start tomorrow morning. The fire service say the incident's the largest peacetime incident of its type in Europe. The first blast was heard 40 miles away. Police say more explosions may take place. The fire's expected to continue to burn for at least another 24 hours. And it's thought that 2,000 people or more have been evacuated from homes around the depot, and others being warned to stay indoors as this thick black smoke continues to billow into the evening sky. Nearby, the M1 motorway is expected to remain closed tomorrow between junctions 6 and 10, and quite a number of the schools in this area around Hemel Hempstead are going to be shut tomorrow as well. A short time ago, Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott arrived at police headquarters. He's heading towards the scene now to see for himself as the work of emergency services continues, and he'll be meeting some of the local residents as well. So let's just remind you, in case you needed any reminding of how close all this has been today to the local residents of Hemel Hempstead, Leverstock Green, the flames literally are just across the rooftops, and you can see them intensely burning, even more so this evening, just across the treetops and the rooftops. They were mighty close to several thousand local residents here. Remarkable that there have been no more than a few casualties today and no fatalities, considering that so many people were woken up by this blast this morning. We'll bring you more from the scene as the fire continues and this column of black smoke continues high into the night sky tonight. Bring you more from the scene right after this break.
The Sky Report is really going to give viewers something new. It's going to be fresh, fiery. We've got our own dedicated team of special correspondents.
It only takes a spark to ignite a tinderbox.
We're aiming to break ground really with the stories that we do and the way that we do them.
Young men who once prayed within their ranks, only to later commit mass murder.
Big name guests and exclusives really make it appointment to view television.
Sky Report, the news in depth with Julie Etchingham, weeknights at 7, Sky News.
Do you have the code? The Armani Code. Fragrance for Men by Giorgio Armani.
See fields, smell grass, see snow, hear laughter. The new Epsom Picturemate range. Don't just see your photos, feel them.
Now at Sony Centres, enjoy the freedom of wireless digital entertainment thanks to Intel Centrino mobile technology. And get up to £240 cash back with up to 12 months BT broadband with wireless access point on selected sensational Sony Vaio notebooks. Sony Centres, more Sony for your money.
When a mouth ulcer pops up, Bongella's triple action helps kill germs, reduces swelling, and relieves pain. Don't put up with it, sort it with Bongella. And now available, new Bongella Cool, powerful soothing relief in a cool mint gel. Bongella Cool, a cool new way to beat mouth ulcers.
Well, these are the latest live pictures that we have from Hemel Hempstead, where that fire occurred at the oil depot. The first explosions really reported around 6:05 this morning to the police. And really, there were a number of people who said that they could hear this blast as far away as Sussex, parts of Oxfordshire. And the reports just coming through of clouds, very dark clouds taking over the sky, dimming the light, but this thick plume of black smoke causing concerns about the health of people, but the authorities trying to reassure the public not to panic and giving them some very basic advice, telling people to stay indoors, to keep their windows and their doors shut, and not to contact the hospitals, the doctors, unless there was an emergency. So the first port of call for those who were experiencing some difficulties to contact NHS Direct. But joining us in the studio are our two experts in the issue of disaster management, Roger Young and also Jeff Charlton. They've really been given their seasoned opinions on this situation as it's been unfolded. I'd like to start first with Roger Young. A few hours ago, the police said, and the police and the fire brigade said that they were confident that they could actually contain this fire, stop it from spreading, keep it under control, and perhaps have it out completely within a few days. Things have moved on since then, but it seems that the timeline that they've drawn up is looking sustainable.
Yes, it looks as though the situation is settling and we're getting some sort of sense out of everything that's coming in. It looks like everything is in control at the site, although my suspicion is, watching the news conference, that the Chief Constable and the Chief Fire Officer are both just concerned that that doesn't spread to any of the other tanks now. If that were to spread in the next 12 hours to any more of those storage tanks, that would substantially extend the timeline. But if it stays as it is, as we see now with the aerial shots, the other storage tanks are perilously close, and their battle will be to stop that going on.
Which appears to tally with something one of the senior fire officers said at the second press conference. He said that they were replenishing the foam stocks, and those foam stocks were coming through from the north of the country, whereas before they were relying on the assistance of the Essex brigades.
Yeah, early reports said that Essex and Buckinghamshire and other local fire services were beginning to offer assistance, certainly in terms of their foam stocks. But clearly, as the day's gone on, the size and the scale of the fire has grown and grown, so they've needed to draw in vast quantities of foam concentrate from the rest of the country. And there's even talk about bringing foam concentrate in from close on Europe. Well, that just goes to show just how big the challenge that they face.
I'd like to bring in Jeff Charlton from Disaster Advice here. Jeff, you have expressed some concern about the possible effects of that smoke drifting into London and the effects that it could produce if it was to come down to some kind of rainstorm that would bring it down to ground level. Can you explain what your concerns are?
Well, my concerns are at the moment that the public generally aren't being given information about what could happen tomorrow morning. You know, we've been told by the various agencies that people should stay out of the smoke plume and they shouldn't breathe it in. Well, during the night people won't see that smoke plume, and I think people ought to be advised at the moment what they're going to be doing tomorrow morning. If this plume continues to move southeast, continues to move towards the London area, it's going to affect an awful lot of people that may or may not want to come to work or not. Obviously we want everybody to come to work, but at the same time it's just a little piece of foresight rather than tomorrow's hindsight of saying, well, maybe someone should have told us.
Seeing these pictures with that thick plume of smoke brings back those memories from the first Gulf War when Saddam Hussein was retreating from Kuwait and set fire to some of the oil fields there, and there was an awful lot of smoke produced. I think you were out there at the time.
That's right.
What kind of effect did it have on the atmosphere and the air that you were breathing?
Well, on a good day, when it was a warm day, and you know, certainly after about 11 o'clock, the oil and the smokes would rise up to the inversion layer, and it was reasonable you didn't need to wear a mask. But when it was a cold morning, and certainly in the earlier parts of the year, and it was cold, then the smokes would come down and the soots would come down, and you'd have to wear a respirator, and it would be a proper respirator. It wouldn't be a paper mask.
And on the basis of what we know, what was kept at this depot, what kind of chemicals are going to be present in that smoke?
Well, you know, people are saying we don't know what toxins are in this smoke. The reality is this is fuel oil is carbon. Carbon is a carcinogen. There will be some forms of benzene and lots of different other additives that are put in. If it was pure petrol or it was pure benzene, it's a major health risk.
Though I suppose what one could argue is at the end of the day, planes would be burning this fuel, cars would be burning this fuel. Of course, we've got an awful lot of it all going up at once, but there's nothing there that wouldn't ordinarily be burnt.
No, that's not true. Planes burn fuel and car engines burn fuel in an efficient manner. And it's to say, if you put this against a crematorium, you'll see no smoke generally come out of a crematorium chimney or in a major clinical waste environment where clinical waste is burnt. But here, where we've got lots of smoke, it means that the particulates or that the fuel isn't being burnt efficiently or properly.
We're going to leave it for now, but so we'll be coming back to you, I'm sure, in the next few minutes. The top stories here on Sky News. There is only one top story. A key oil depot near Hemel Hempstead is in flames after being rocked by 3 huge explosions just after 6 a.m. this morning. 43 people were injured, 2 seriously. The depot is divided into 2. One half has been destroyed. Police say they're still treating the blast as an accident and that all staff have now been accounted for. 250,000 litres of foam concentrate is on its way to the scene for when firefighters start tackling the blaze, which is expected to be tomorrow.
Let's take a look at the timeline now, because the first explosion was heard up to 40 miles away, while nearby residents said they were woken by what they described as a loud boom as their houses shook. 2 more explosions were heard later, around 6:20, and police say that more explosions are expected. The fire itself is expected to continue to burn for another 24 hours. The fire service says that it's the largest such incident in peacetime Europe.
2,000 people have been evacuated from homes around the depot, and others are being warned to stay indoors as thick smoke continues to billow into the sky. The nearby M1 motorway is expected to remain closed until tomorrow, while schools in the area are also likely to be shut tomorrow.
Okay, well, we've been interviewing a number of experts, and we're joined on the line now by Dr. Stephen Stiro. He is of the British Lung Foundation. Dr. Stiro, thank you so much for joining us here on the line at Sky News. The main concern, of course, the aftermath of this blaze, and in particular the impact it could have on those who suffer from respiratory conditions.
Yes, that's right. This is an awful lot of highly irritative particles that have been released. Much will depend on whether there's a wind that spreads this even further than it is at the moment. At the moment over London it's a fairly still day, and one therefore might expect these particles to come down and start settling. They can irritate the airways of people with lung disease, particularly asthmatics, making their asthma worse, and people with chronic obstructive bronchitis or COPD. Again, it'll irritate their lungs. It'll make them cough a lot. It increases the risk of breathlessness and chest infection. So potentially it's quite hazardous.
Because I suppose that there are some who would feel that perhaps those who live closest to where this is happening in the Hemel Hempstead area, they are, for obvious reasons, the most vulnerable. But for those who live a little bit further away, where there is some smoke from this disaster actually being carried in the airwaves, that perhaps they're a little bit safer because, if you like, they're in the right location. It's the geography that works to their advantage.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the nearer you are to it, the greater the exposure, and then much will depend, as I say, on which direction the cloud goes and how quickly it comes down. It's not the very big particles that matter so much. They're the ones that will fall fastest. It's the smaller ones that you breathe into the lungs that will settle into the lungs. So it could affect quite a large area, and only time will tell, really.
And it's unfortunate timing, isn't it, from the point of view of those who do suffer from respiratory problems, that this explosion has occurred at a time when it's very cold, and for a lot of people who suffer from asthma, etc., cold weather is something they really have to guard themselves against.
Well, that's absolutely right. Not only is it cold, but we're right in the middle of the flu season. They're much better tomorrow for these people to avoid going out into the open if there is any risk that they're underneath this cloud. I think one has to people have to be as careful as they can, I think.
But there are people who are going to have to travel through this. They have to go to work tomorrow. So what other steps can they take to protect themselves? What advice would you give to them?
Well, I think you've got to put something. I mean, if it really is visible, this cloud, then they should wear a scarf over their mouths or a handkerchief or something that will at least filter the particles. And I mean, you know, in the days of the smog in the 50s and 60s, one put a scarf over one's face, and that certainly helps a lot with the filtering. Breathe through the nose rather than the mouth, because the nose is very, very good at filtering out particles from the air. So deep, slow nose breathing, I think, is much better than big breaths through the mouth.
Okay, well, joining me in the studio is Dr. Carol Cooper, who's been listening to that discussion with Dr. Steero of the British Lung Foundation. Some sound advice there.
Absolutely, and I could also add, try not to talk when you're out of doors, because when you talk, of course, you need to open your mouth. So just concentrate on breathing if you have to get from one place to another.
Okay then, so some sound advice complementing the advice we had there from Dr. Stephen Steero of the British Lung Foundation. Dr. Steero, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your assessment, the medical assessment of these unfolding events in Hemel Hempstead. Dr. Cooper, whenever situations like this occur, thankfully, rarely, there are always certain groups of people who are going to be vulnerable, particularly those with respiratory conditions and the elderly as well. But
absolutely,
something like this doesn't discriminate. That's the point.
Well, it doesn't. You see, we've got a lot of volatile hydrocarbons, there are soot particles, there are also sulfur-containing products which are very, very irritant. That's mainly in the diesel. And these things can irritate the nose, mouth and throat and eyes of absolutely anyone. Now, obviously, those who have asthma or other breathing problems are most at risk, as are the elderly, but anybody can get the irritation from it. And I was smelling the smell from the fumes earlier on, and it's a pretty vile smell, and that should tell you to stay indoors, and for good reason, right, because that's how you can protect yourself.
And if we're just getting the scent of it, and I use that word guardedly, in our location in West London, there are people who are writing in from other parts of the country, well, obviously around the south, who are saying it's a hell of a lot stronger, it's deeply unpleasant, and they're already complaining of some of these symptoms.
Well, actually by 10 a.m. I could smell it in Basingstoke. So it had travelled quite rapidly, and although the winds aren't particularly strong today, I would also advise people to keep an eye on the weather reports and air quality reports, because the effect will be quite patchy depending on whether there's high ground, low ground, etc. So be careful. And also I should warn people who have heart conditions, because they too will be particularly vulnerable. We've not talked much about them. We've concentrated on people with lung disease, but actually people who have heart problems are also at risk.
Right, so heart problems in terms of the stress, for example, because of not knowing the uncertainty.
Yeah, but also because you can't breathe properly, and therefore it robs the heart of oxygen, and if your heart is already at risk, then you have a higher chance of having a heart attack.
But I suppose that for a lot of people, they're saying, look, all the advice that we're being given now, it's very, very helpful, it's very welcome, but at the same time, we can't put our lives on hold. Like it or not, some of us will have to travel through this, we've got to work. And what are the long-term consequences as well? There's speculation about how this is going to affect the environment in the long term. What about our health?
Well, we don't know for sure. This does seem like an instant return to the smogs of the bad old days in London, but this should be a relatively short-lived thing, so it shouldn't have the long-term effects that we used to have. But yes, some people may be more severely affected, and they may develop, say, pneumonia.
Okay, well, Dr. Carol Cooper, stay with us, because obviously this story continues to unfold.
Well, we're joined now by Enda Brady, who joins us from the scene in Hemel Hempstead. Enda, we've been talking about the whole issue of the effects of this black cloud and the smoke that's coming off it. What's the air quality like where you are at the moment?
I have to say it's pretty okay where we are now. We were on the scene very early this morning, and at that point, before the police cordon started growing and growing and people moving further and further away from the actual scene, the air was quite acrid as that huge big column of smoke billowed up into the air. It was very acrid indeed, quite unpleasant, but as the day progressed, officers from Hertfordshire Police just moved the cordon further and further so paramedics and firefighters could be contained inside that sterile area so they could do their work. But the air quality right now is pretty okay, I have to say.
You've been down there all day talking to many of the residents. What's the reaction been like of people down there? They must have been horribly shocked by some of the scenes that they've seen.
Initially, chaos and confusion really, people falling out of bed quite literally in their bedclothes and just walking out into the streets. One man who we spoke to, Reg Elms, his back patio doors were blown in by the force of the blast, and he said he initially thought his house was being burgled. He ran downstairs with a golf club in his hand. He was expecting to confront an intruder. He went out into the street, and all his neighbours and friends from his community were likewise standing out in the street in their bedclothes, just wondering what was going on. But as the day progressed and people realised that there were no fatalities and that the vast majority of people who were injured were just carrying superficial injuries, relief was the main kind of emotion. People very, very relieved indeed. We spoke to Ian Stowe, a resident of this area, and he was lying in his bed this morning at 6 a.m. when his bedroom window quite literally exploded. He got glass in his eye. He was taken to hospital. We spoke to him on Sky News earlier on today, and he said, look, I'll be okay. I'll be back at work very soon, but just very, very grateful indeed that nobody has lost their life here today. So the initial shock and confusion turned to relief as people realised that no lives have been lost.
And to stay with us, because this story is evolving, it has been evolving really throughout the day. We know that initially there have been people staying at nearby hotels who were evacuated from the building for obvious safety reasons. Now we're getting reports that about 290 people have actually been taken to a leisure centre, obviously for their own security. What are you hearing about that? I mean, we're seeing these pictures here, people wrapped up in blankets, resting after their ordeal. What are you hearing about that?
Well, we know indeed hundreds and hundreds of people have been moved away from the area. This is primarily for their own safety. In fact, we wanted to go back and interview Reg Elms this afternoon, the man we spoke to whose property had been extensively damaged as a result of the blast. And when we tried to return to his property, police said absolutely no chance, no vehicles are going down this road. We won't even allow people down on foot. And they said that this is purely because they have information that there could be more blasts through the evening, and they said it's just not safe. So the police cordon we've seen grow and expand as the day has gone on. I have to say the vast majority of people have paid heed to the emergency services, all the advice from earlier on to stay indoors, to lock your doors, to keep your windows closed. The overwhelming majority of people in Hemel Hempstead and surrounding villages have stayed indoors, but human curiosity being what it is, some people have come out with their cameras, their mobile phones and what have you. They're following the news coverage and they just want to take pictures of the event, but the vast majority of people have actually listened to the emergency services and the advice given.
You've been there for most of the day, and this has obviously caused tremendous disruption, but the mood amongst people, are they very understanding about the whole thing?
Most definitely people are upbeat. We've seen what I can only describe really as Dunkirk spirit, neighbours coming out with pots of tea and sandwiches, helping each other and just realising that they're all in this together and offering people beds for the night, and people are on the phone asking loved ones if they're okay, is there anything we can do for you. I have to say, great community spirit here. People have really rallied around and very, very relieved just that no lives have been lost, and people have really got together and made the best of this. And the best example of that was very early on when we got here, just a short while after the initial explosion, and we were witnessing officers, off-duty police from the Metropolitan Force, just parking up on the side of the road, abandoning their vehicles, donning fluorescent jackets and helping out their colleagues from Hertfordshire Police. So a real community effort here in Hemel Hempstead today.
And that's good to see in the face of this disaster. But Enda Brady at Hemel Hempstead for now, thank you.
You're watching Sky News. These are live pictures coming out of Hemel Hempstead. The explosion there which rocked the town 6 o'clock this morning, starting a fire. You can still see it burning with no obvious sign of it dying out. These are the live pictures coming out of Hemel Hempstead. We're going to take a short break now, but we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
As the day draws to a close and you're ready to unwind, turn off the lights and when you're not ready for the day to end. Late night films on Sky.
Now, the tough housewives take their partners for the Rinse and Reuse Championship. Audrey's traditional towel versus Brenda's single sheet of Bounty.
Use, rinse, rinse, use.
Oh, Audrey, do keep up.
Use, rinse, rinse, use.
Look at that. One sheet of Bounty and the whole job's done. I'm a bit worried about Audrey. Rinse and reuse, it's strictly Bounty.
No more arguments over map reading and which way to turn. Our lowest ever price TomTom GPS, just $219.
Online or in store, the best of both worlds this Christmas.
Always ready for action. IXO, the world's first cordless screwdriver with lithium-ion technology. Get even more power with our new lithium-ion screw and drill drivers. Bosch, invented for life.
The Sharp Aquos LCD TV. Suddenly, there's more to see.
The gate is open. Order before the end of December and get super fast Bulldog broadband for £9.75 a month. Fixed for as long as you're with us. Up to 8 meg broadband for £9.75 a month. Call now on 08000 15 16 17. Bulldog. Broadband and phone.
This winter, enjoy a luxurious holiday at Egypt's Red Sea Riviera Resorts. Brilliant sunshine, world-famous water sports, and trips to legendary Luxor and the pyramids. For the holiday of a lifetime, contact your travel agent about Egypt's Red Sea Riviera Resorts now.
You're watching Sky News, a top story. A key oil depot near Hemel Hempstead is in flames after being rocked by 3 huge explosions just after 6 this morning. 43 people were injured, 2 seriously. The depot is divided into 2, one half has been destroyed. Police say they're still treating the blast as an accident and that all staff have now been accounted for. 250,000 litres of foam concentrate is on its way to the scene when firefighters start to tackle the blaze, which is expected to be tomorrow.
Well, the first explosion was heard up to 40 miles away, while nearby residents said they were woken by what they described as a loud boom as their houses shook. 2 more explosions were heard later. Police say that more explosions are expected. The fire itself is expected to continue to burn for at least another 24 hours. The fire service says it's the largest such incident in peacetime Europe.
2,000 people have been evacuated from their homes around the depot, and others are being warned to stay indoors as the thick smoke continues to bellow into the sky. The nearby M1 motorway is expected to remain closed until tomorrow, while schools in the area are also likely to be shut tomorrow.
First reports of those explosions came through around 6:05 this morning. As you can see, really, the fire continues to rage. The real challenge for the fire crews and others involved in trying to contain this is to make sure the damage is as minimum as possible, but also to try to prevent any further explosions, although the police have warned that this is likely, although they have stressed that there is nothing abnormal about that given the current situation. But a number of people have been evacuated, as you've seen from our reports, more for their own safety, because naturally there are concerns about the environmental impact that could arise as a result of this. Plenty of unknowns, and also concerns about the health factor as well, although people have been told really to stay indoors, to keep their windows shut, and to avoid the temptation to go outside to see what's happening. It's understandable given that these pictures are dramatic, but very, very worrying as well. There will be an investigation, of course, into what caused this, but the police have gone to great pains to stress that as far as they are concerned, sabotage is not at the root of what happened. They have said that as far as they are concerned, this will be treated as an accident. So these are the latest pictures that we have here from Hemel Hempstead. Of course, we will be updating you throughout the day as there are further developments, but we have been looking at the medical aspects of this case and the incident, and I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Carol Cooper. Carol, we were talking about the categories of people who are deemed to be particularly vulnerable. A lot of emphasis placed on those suffering from emphysema, asthma, bronchitis, but also as well heart patients as well. They have to protect themselves because there's a very real risk that if they get very stressed, this could provoke an anxiety attack.
It could destabilise their situation basically, and they could have a heart attack. So yes, they should be particularly careful as well. But the advice is that everybody who's in an affected area should stay indoors with the windows and doors shut.
Advice is really the key to this, because what the police and others were saying during the press conferences we've been following is that yes, people should stay indoors, but they should also avoid going to the hospitals and going to their GPs. The first port of call has to be NHS Direct. But again, this is going to put a strain on the service, which is heavily used already.
Well, it is, but you see, we're talking about a fairly localised area, and if in one area a number of people are affected and they all go to their doctor, that will overload services locally. But if they ring NHS Direct, that's spread out over the nation, and so that's a more efficient way of dealing with it initially. But yes, people may need to go to hospital, especially if they disregard the advice to stay in.
Yeah.
The trouble with this smoke is that it's a very, very potent irritant, and for people with asthma particularly, what it does is it narrows the air passages, and that can precipitate an attack, so you can get short of breath, you can cough a lot, or you can wheeze, and of course that's very frightening.
It is as well, because if you think about it logically as well, there are a lot of people who may indeed have experienced some breathing difficulties, and reflexively as an asthmatic, and I know this because I suffer from the condition myself, you actually take your sprays. And so you're taking one set of chemicals to actually control this, and then of course you've got this alien chemicals that you're breathing in.
Well, they're completely different chemicals, of course, and I think any asthmatic who's got reliever inhalers would know to take a puff or two if they start getting worse. They would do that first, and then take action some more if necessary.
All right, for the moment, Carol, thank you.
On the line is the Director General of the Petroleum Industry Association, Chris Hunt, who's been in constant contact with the Department of Trade and Industry throughout the day. I'd like to ask you first, Chris, what could have caused this? What possibly could have gone wrong that led to this massive explosion?
Well, hi. First of all, may I say that our sympathies go out to all of those that were injured in this this terrible event, and to those who have been affected in the immediate vicinity. We honestly don't know at this stage. It's obviously a very, very big incident, as is self-evident from the pictures you've been carrying. And I think it'd be foolish to speculate on what the causes might be. Let's wait for the proper investigation and act upon any findings that emerge.
You've been in touch with the Department of Trade and Industry, I think, throughout the day. What kind of conversations have you been having with them?
Well, the UK has a very robust set of downstream oil emergency response plans, and we've been looking through those plans, keeping the DTI informed of the situation as we understand it, and also keeping the DTI abreast of developments as they emerge, and the oil industry's workarounds to try and mitigate the effects of this Buncefield event. And might I say that this really is not a supply issue. All of the 9 major UK refineries are functioning 100%. All of the import terminals are open. The pipelines are functioning, and tankers are running. This is a distribution event that we've had through these tragic happenings at Buncefield, and the industry now is very much working with our government on how do we work round, how do we relocate drivers, how do we manage product around the southeast to absolutely minimise the impact of the events at Buncefield.
We were seeing pictures earlier on of people queuing up at petrol stations, concerned that there would be some kind of shortage. Some people would be surprised that you could lose a major facility like this, and according to all the experts we've spoken to, there shouldn't be any shortage of petrol or other fuels.
Well, it's I mean, firstly, I think the message to the public is, as we saw in September, if we do get an outbreak of panic buying, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You do then force stockouts on service stations and the distribution system. But secondly, you cannot take out a distribution terminal like Buncefield, which is about 5% of total UK throughput, with absolutely no effect. There has been the obvious effect today that drivers who were due to load and pull out of Buncefield have been unable to do so, and they've been relocated to other terminals, which means busing them either home or to the new terminal to go and work from there. And we've lost some tankers in Buncefield at the moment. So, but we're working around that. The industry is going absolutely flat out to mitigate any of the effects of these events.
Chris Hunt from the Petroleum Industry Association, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, live pictures there from Hemel Hempstead. Earlier, Hertfordshire's chief fire officer told a news conference that this was, in his words, the largest such incident in peacetime Europe, with people reporting the first of these explosions at 6:05 this morning, describing huge plumes of thick black smoke trailing over their homes. Fire crews and rescue teams swung into action as quickly as possible as soon as those first reports actually came through.
Also getting reports of massive disruption to the surrounding roads in the area. The M1 is closed in both directions, obviously the southern portion of the M1, and there's been a significant number of people evacuated from the area. 2,000 people, we understand, have been evacuated from their homes, many of whom have been sent to out of town leisure centre, where they'll be spending the night, it seems. These are the live pictures. You're watching Sky News. More news in just a few minutes' time.
Survival depends on the ability to evolve. Introducing the most advanced Mondeo yet. The new 2005 Mondeo. Evolution is beautiful.
Reason 8. Whenever you visit Morrison's, you'll find over 150 buy one, get one free offers. More reasons to shop at Morrison's.
Do you know anything about Uslot? Nah, I knew this year, apparently.
Whatever your plans, you can be confident AXA PPP Healthcare can help bring them to life. Be life confident.
My name is Uri and welcome to my house. Let me take you on a little tour. It's good, yeah? Oh, my stereo! And this is my pride and joy, my refrigerator. Maybe. Perfect temperature. This crazy boy here is my homeboy Gur. And this is the best thing about my place. Peace and quiet.
Smirnoff Ice.
Brrr.
On your left is this Acer Pocket PC with built-in sat-nav for only £199. And on your right, save £100 on this Konica Minolta 8-megapixel digital camera down to £199. And exclusive to Comet, this motorised golf trolley for £179. Comet, we live electricals.
Nicht gründlich genug. Immer noch einzelne Haare. Besser. Das ist es.
Introducing Braun's Power Comb that captures more missed hairs than ever before.